Call the meeting to order. 2.0 adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments? Okay.
Could we add for executive, oh, you've already got it. Nope, you've already got it.
Okay.
No worries.
Anyone else? All right, audience 3.0 audience and communication. And since we have so many people in the audience and some of you may or may not have come to board meetings before, I'm just going to read the little explanation. The purpose of this segment of the agenda is to provide for public comments. This is the audience's opportunity to address the board on action matters before the board at this meeting and or matters not on the agenda. Non-agenda topics will be referred to staff, taken under advisement, identify next steps, if any, or scheduled for a future meeting. All right, is there any audience in communication? And if you could stand if able, and if not, you may remain seated and state your name so that we have a record of it. And since it looks like a lot of people want to talk, if you've heard someone make the same comment, maybe you want to make a different comment than someone else has made, but it's up to you. All right, go ahead, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Eichelhart. I have a fourth grader at CCS, and I am here because I am concerned about the size of the classes as they are proposed for next year's fifth grade. I respectfully ask you to reconsider the plan you have for the rising fifth graders. I believe strongly that it is in the best interest of these students that they be given the opportunity to learn in 3 classrooms of approximately 18 or 19 students, as opposed to 2 classrooms of 27 or 28 students each. My husband and I had a meeting with Ms. Boutal in March, and at that meeting there were a bunch of things that we learned, including that contrary to what people were saying, the decision to have 2 classrooms was not budget driven. That the decision was made in the fall based on a committee recommendation, that committee had forecasted enrollment numbers, that they had input from many people, including the 2 receiving 5th grade teachers, Mr. Baird and Ms. Morosky, who we all know are fantastic teachers. This is all good information, but we have 2 very specific issues here that make this grade and this situation unique. The first issue is the actual number of students in this grade. There are 56 students currently on the list for 5th grade for next year. If you go with 2 classrooms and the classroom size is 27 or 28, I don't believe the students will receive the best education and most positive academic experience possible. Even with these 2 awesome 5th grade teachers, and even with a general education paraeducator in each classroom, and even with a co-teacher for math, all of which is part of the current plan, I still think it would be very challenging to provide each student with the best education when you've got 27 kids in the room. And we know that there is research that shows there's a direct correlation between class size and student achievement. Smaller the class size, higher the student achievement. The second issue is related to the specific makeup of this particular class or grade. It's a challenging mix of students with a wide variety of personalities and learning styles. To this point, here is some of the information that wasn't available in the fall when the committee made this decision. This is all in the behavior data that's in today's principal report. As of the end of April, our 4th grade students have had the most behavior referrals of any grade in the school by far. 84 behavior referrals for our 4th graders, which actually constitutes 1/4 of all of the referrals in the whole school. So just our class for all 9 grades. So that's sort of extreme, but it's not an anomaly. If you look at last year's numbers, these same students, when they were 3rd graders, their grade had the highest number of referrals for that year out of all of the grades 1 through 8. So of this year's 84 referrals that were behavior referrals for the 4th grade, the setting from which the most referrals were made was from the classroom setting, and that is them being in a classroom with only 18 students. So I don't have data for this, but logic would hold that if there are a good, healthy number of behavior referrals in a classroom of 18 of these same students, if you were to put 27 or 28 of them in the room, I would bet that that behavior referral number would probably increase. When the recommendation was made in the fall to go to 2 classes, none of this data was available. And I don't think that we can deny that these are significant numbers and relevant numbers. And I think that they demand another look about the classroom plan for this grade. You know, I respectfully ask you to consider 3 classrooms. I believe that with this unique mix of students, 2 large classrooms will not provide a safe and positive environment and the best quality education for our kids. Thank you.
Is there any other audience and communication?
All right, my turn. Hi, everyone. My name is Sage Bagnato, and I'm a parent of 3 children, 2 of whom are currently at CCS in 2nd grade and 4th grade. I also work as a learning specialist at Vermont Common School and at the Stern Center for Language and Learning as an evaluator and teacher trainer. So I have a prepared statement only because my brain isn't always working so well at 7 at night. So I'm here, similar to Laura, to express my significant concerns about the proposal to consolidate the 3 current 4th grade classes into 2 instructional groupings, a change that will result in excessively large classes. I am requesting that you reconsider this proposal now based on current facts and information and keep these students in 3 classrooms for the upcoming school year. Here's why. In 2010, Vermont established that the optimal average range per grade cluster for 5th and 6th grade is 14 to 20 students. While this is only a guideline, it exists for a reason in recognition of the fact that class size matters. 28 students per class would significantly exceed this guideline set forth by our Department of Education. Related to this, the state board has mandated that, quote, in grades 4 through 8, when taken together, classes shall average fewer than 25 students per teacher. With the large class size of the current 5th grade and the changes being made at the middle school level, I'm assuming that this regulation has been considered and that CCS will be in compliance with this rule if the current proposal stands. Nevertheless, the implication from this regulation is again that class size matters. This message sent by our governing body of education is one that I feel, and I think many parents here also agree, is one that we should be listening to. So why does class size matter? Most importantly, smaller class size leads to greater student achievement. There is a misconception that this is not the case, mainly due to the fact that the results from poorly designed studies have clouded the issue. However, credible research has demonstrated the positive effects of smaller class size. As explained by the U.S. Department of Education, class size, quote, class size is one of only 4 evidence-based reforms that have been proven to increase student achievement through rigorous randomized experiments, which are the gold standard of research, end quote. In addition, smaller class size provides more opportunities for students to interact with their teacher, to ask questions, to seek help, and be engaged members of the classroom community. For teachers, smaller classes allow more time to be spent with each individual student and more opportunities to address the varied learning styles and profiles within the class. In addition, instruction that promotes problem solving and critical thinking can be delivered more effectively in a smaller class. Isn't this part of the mission of CCS, to encourage our students to learn actively, pursue excellence, think creatively and critically? Additional benefits of smaller class size include fewer behavioral issues and special education referrals. We know from the principal's report that Laura just alluded to that this class has had the largest amount of behavioral referrals in the entire school for 2 consecutive years, and larger than average percentage of students on IEPs, 504s, and EST plans suggesting that this class's academic, behavioral, and social emotional needs are significant. In my opinion, putting this makeup of kids in a class of 25 plus students is just plain irresponsible. I've expressed these concerns to Audrey, who agreed to meet with us at a parent meeting on April 18th and in an email to the school board on April 30th. In response to these points that I have conveyed tonight, I have been told the following. First, that this is what the current 5th grade teachers want. And while I have also heard wonderful things about the teachers, that they are fabulous and I certainly respect their opinions, I also ask, do the PE, art, music, Spanish, library, computer lab teachers also prefer to have 28 kids per class as opposed to a more manageable size of 18? I've also been told that the current proposal was based on the class configuration study from 2012. While I commend all the significant amount of time and effort and work that went into this, it's now 2014 and we have new information. Finally, I understand that if the class size reaches 29, Audrey will recommend the hiring of an additional teacher. But my question is, why is 28 acceptable, but 29 is not? Enrollment is a moving target and will likely change in June, August, and even into the next school year. Basing this decision on speculation as to who may be moving or returning to CCS is a slippery slope. Class size at CCS should be based on best practices in education and a philosophy of learning, not pinned to a specific number. In sum, I ask that you keep the incoming 5th graders in 3 classrooms for the 2014-15 school year, as this arrangement, in combination with the excellent teachers and administrators at CCS, will provide our students with the best educational experience possible. I also ask that you make this change now instead of waiting until June 30th. Talented teachers are looking for jobs now and may not be available mid-summer. This will allow the team to have sufficient time to prepare in terms of curriculum, scheduling, and classroom space. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your thoughtful consideration of this issue.
Thank you. Next, would anyone else like to, any other audience communication? Go ahead.
I have a question for
You just state your name though first, thanks.
I have a child, Aiden, in 4th grade, and he will be in 5th grade next year. And I was one of the parents that met with Audrey and Sage and Sarah and a few other parents on the 18th of April. And I know that, Audrey, you had indicated that you would meet with the current 4th grade teachers to get their opinions as to whether or not 2 or 3 classes would be better for the kids. We didn't hear back from you as to whether or not you had a chance to meet with them. And so I was just wondering if they had any input in what it was.
Sure, actually, that helped craft my principal's report that I delivered last week. We did meet with the teachers, we met with the architects, we met with the special educators, we met with Vicki Nelson, the school counselor, and we talked about the current scenario and talked about the pros and cons of having, whether we're being in 3 groups or 2 groups. And bottom line, where we left it was, basically, it's really about the relationships that the teachers are going to have and the best practices that the teachers are going to use instructionally. Whether we have 3 classrooms or 2, we talked about the behavioral problems, our concerns with that, and we discussed that the students, it's nice that Vicki will be continuing with the group of students with the social emotional pieces and behavioral pieces. Mr. Dina Cole will be involved, and both Mr. Baird and Mrs. Morosky has shared, and I know this is a different group of kids, but in the past 3 years, there are always students that come up that have concerns regarding behavior issues, and they discuss them. We have transition meetings, and the things that come up, we don't tend to see those because of the groupings that they have going into the 2 groups, because there's more diversity and there's more kids for them to connect with academically and socially, rather than being in 3 separate groups. So again, I know that this is a different group of children we're talking about, but we really discussed all those things, and in the end decided as a team, and as well as my input and Connie Engel's, to continue our proposal, knowing that we would wait till June 30th at most, and then put a posting out in early June, knowing that we still have some students who may not be coming back. But we did meet with the teachers. And bottom line, the synopsis was, it's really about the relationships that the teachers are going to establish, and their content knowledge and pedagogical instruction, and what they're going to do with the students. And we've been doing a lot in the past few years. We talked about this as a team, that we know smaller class sizes allows you to have more contact with students individually, and that there's increased discourse that way. However, with the practices that we've been in place, that are in place now with the math studios and with the shift to Common Core, those same things are happening with larger groups of students. They become our norms, and we see them when we go through our walkthroughs. So I understand the studies that you've looked at showing those pieces, but our instruction has changed, and the best practices that we are doing, we believe that we can support the needs of the students and allow the critical thinking, the justification, the discourse between students, teachers' opportunity to meet with students individually, as well as in smaller groups because of their instructional tools that we're giving them now. It's research-based, it's cutting edge, and
Despite the behavioral issues, you think that the way the teachers manage the classroom is adequate to
We
meet
actu-
the best practices?
I think we believe that whether we have 3 sections or 2 sections, we're still gonna be dealing with some behavior concerns and social pieces, and we know that whether it's in 2 sections or 3 sections, that's still something that we're gonna have to work on. I know that this year, Mr. Marino has worked, we have a care team meeting that we meet weekly with, we talk about these students. There are team meetings, we look at data to help us inform how we're going to address the behavior issues, and we will continue to do that next year as continuing what we're doing this year, to the end of the year.
And for the next audience, I should have pointed this out, but this is, audience communication is to communicate with the board, so if you could direct comments at the board instead, that would be great. Is there more audience and communication? Yes?
Hi, I'm Andrew Hagney, and I have a child that will be affected by this. Just more of an observation through the board. It sounds to me like the administration is kind of more concerned about the staff a little bit and how they're gonna, how they want to work, and less about the children, the kids. So I just sort of have to share that. It's sort of a disturbing thing. I think I get the sense that we're moving further away from a community school, and that we kind of, the board seems, in my little I know about it, it seems like they're too quick to just defer to the administration. And my observation is, we elect you guys to do this. So I think, it sounds to me from some of the numbers that were thrown around earlier that we're looking at getting close to 100% above the midpoint of the state's recommendation. And I just fail to see how that's beneficial to the kids. So that's it. Thanks.
Any more? Go ahead.
I don't have any, I'm Julie Sigmund. I don't have any fancy data per se, but I know that I have a 4th grader, I have a 2nd grader, and I have a kindergartner. And since my daughter's been in kindergarten, I asked all my kids every night at dinner, what was the best part of the day, the worst part of the day, and who got in trouble. The list doesn't change. It hasn't changed since kindergarten. The same kids are going to get in trouble. I could bet on it now. I could give you the list, and it's going to happen. I spend a significant time in the school, and I'm pretty much aware of that. And you say, well, the classroom, the behavior issues aren't going to change. I mean, because they're still going to exist whether they're in 2 classrooms or 3 classrooms, and I agree with that. But the instruction time in that one classroom is going to go down, because on a day where only 2 kids got in trouble, now there's going to be 4. And that's just reality. I mean, my kindergartner can tell you who's going to get in trouble in 4th grade next week, because it's the same. Every week, it's the same. So I guess that's the point, is that the instruction time will go down, because the behavior issues are still going to be there, because they haven't gone away, and we don't want to lose that time. So that's just my point.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Sarah Scranton. I also have a 4th grader, obviously, and I don't have things prepared like these other things, but I do have questions for Audrey. I guess I'll address it to the board, and maybe you can answer for her. And then I also have just some general comments.
So Audrey, will you allow one class at 29 and one at 28 before you hire a teacher? Sorry, the board, or do both classes have to be at 29? And also, is June 30th the one time you're looking at it, or if we exceed 28 students on August 2nd, are you going to hire another teacher? From the way that this principal's report was written, it appears to me that it's a one-time look. And if on June 30th we have 28 and 29, you'll hire another teacher, and that teacher will stay regardless of the enrollment waivers between the start of the year. And also, I think Sage addressed this. What is the magic number of 29? Why is 28 okay for all these math studios and best practices and these dual teaching things, but 29's not? And then I also want to reiterate what Julie said. Yeah, we're still going to have the same troublemakers, which is another question. What are you guys doing to address that? And what, obviously it's not working, whatever you're doing, because the numbers keep going up every year for our group of kids. And if those kids are now in 2 classes, the disruptions and the detrimental effects on our kids' education will be double. Thanks. If you need me to remind you of all the questions.
So correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's a one-time only look. It's a,
It's a weekly look.
weekly look at those numbers. And Audrey could come to us at any time in the summer and request us to have a special meeting if she felt like additional staff was needed for this reason or for any other. And
29 per class.
in the 29 number,
If we, do you want me
we
to
would-
respond?
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I just,
If we hit 29 in one class, that's our stopping point, we would request, I would come to the board and request a teacher at that point. It doesn't have to be in both classes, it's just when we hit 29.
So that's, I guess that would be, maybe it's a good time just to get into a little bit of how 28's okay and 29's not. Because when this came to the board originally during budget time, we didn't have the information about the intensity of the behavioral issue with this cohort of kids. And B, it was framed as, we've consistently done 24, 25 in that class, in that grouping. The teachers are equipped to handle that. Administration's comfortable with it. Teachers are comfortable with it. The parents I can speak as a parent who's been through a cycle. I didn't have a complaint with it, right? So 27 from 25, with the addition of a couple pairs, it seemed, I think the board came to a fair conclusion based on the recommendation and the thought that it put into it, that you guys have put into it, that this has worked in the past. Can you maybe speak to why 29 won't work? And sort of, is that because you're starting to get your arms around how potentially disruptive this group of kids is, or is it because there's some magic to that, that number?
Just to clarify, Eric, when we met back in, during budget season, the projected numbers at that time were 50, we were supposed to have 27 per classroom.
Exactly.
So not
27,
20,
25.
right.
So I'm
And-
saying that was within
Right,
a range where you
And-
could plausibly say, if this 27 was like the 25 kids last year and the year before, it's sensible to think we could make it work the way we made it work before.
right, and we started this school year with 27 and 26 in the current
Right.
class, and we did lose some students, but based on the experience of the past 3 years and knowing we had 27 and 26 to start with, there was a feeling, or just, well, there's a couple things. We felt with general ed pairs, I gave the student teachers, we talked about in preparation for the budget hearing, or the budget proposals, we have high class sizes for next year, larger than what we're used to. I'm comfortable going to the board and just asking for a third teacher, or do we want to continue the model we're using, knowing what we've had, the experience we've had in the past, and knowing the benefits of that model. And we met as a team, not at the time with the architects team, the current 4th grade teachers, we met with the special educators and the special ed administrator and the current teachers, and we knew that there were some behavior problems then at that point. Even though I didn't bring that up at that point, we knew that that was a concern. At that point there, we felt, no, we would have 27, and if we had other students coming in, that we would look at that. And I have to say also, enrollment varies throughout the year and the summer, so I'm always looking at the enrollment piece. As far as the 29 piece, we know that because of some of the services that these students will receive throughout the day, there are going to be times that you're not going to have the full 28 students available with us. And the feeling was that if we hit 29, that with the needs of the students and kids being pulled out and the makeup of the classroom, that they would not feel comfortable with that. And I supported that, knowing that there's gonna be at times where kids, you're not gonna have a full class. And when we met last week with the architects, they said the same thing. Time out here, I should just remember that one particular teacher said, there are times when I don't have the full class with me. So based on that, and at the beginning of the year, knowing that, talking to the special educators, we felt that that was, I don't wanna say the prescribed number, but we felt that that was the place where we'd wanna go for the third teacher.
Thank you. And can you please address what you're going to do to change the chronic behavior issues that are getting worse year after year, and what you're gonna, changes you're gonna implement to stop that?
Well, we have our behavior report coming up, so I mean, you know, you can ask questions, and that's something that we will, you know, we heard you, and we'll.
2 or 3 classes, that underlying problem is still there. That's a whole nother issue that needs to be addressed.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to have people who haven't gone first, and then you can speak again. Go ahead, Joe.
So, classroom size is just one factor. I mean, small classroom size does not guarantee good education. So it's just one of the many factors. What I would like to know is that the budget has two, now is assistant teacher or basically there'll be 2 assistant to the teacher. So the question now, what are their roles in the classroom with the teacher? So I mean, one way or the other, I'm not going one way or the other. I'm more looking at the effectiveness of the teacher. So if the teacher is effective, you can have 30 less students. But if the teacher is not, give them 5, you're still in trouble. However, what would be the role of the assistant teacher in order to support the current teachers in their role? What is the plan on how they're going to be effective to help managing every aspect of the classroom? I think that may address some of the concerns of the parents here.
Yeah, I don't know how we answer that in this setting. I don't know how far afield.
I think you note it, and then you have time to discuss when you want to discuss this. Is this a retreat topic? Is it something that you want to, you know, put on your work plan?
Okay.
You need information to
Okay.
respond.
So is this level of detail something that the board wants on a future agenda? The specific role of the paras in the 5th grade, or to discuss at the retreat? Anyone?
I would not make it a retreat topic because nobody comes to the
Right,
retreats, and these are the people who are interested in what the information is. So if we're going to discuss it, we should do it at a regular meeting where people who are concerned can hear it. And then the answer to your question is yes, I think we should discuss it.
Okay, so let's add it to our future agenda.
Is it my understanding that the paras are just basic paras? They don't have, I mean, my understanding of a para, and if you don't want to get into this now, is the para does not participate at all in planning the curriculum. The para that morning knows the curriculum is going to get planned, doesn't get involved in parent-teacher conferences, is more of a, supports the classroom and, you know, tries to keep things somewhat on schedule, but they're not at all involved in the teaching. So I think to call it an assistant teacher is inaccurate, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, they're general education paraeducators who are being hired to assist in those classrooms. That's correct. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Who would like to? Or you can wait, we can let Sage go, and if anything comes up that people want to.
Well, I don't know, the moment had passed, but I was just wanting to, I guess Audrey was explaining like how we came to be in this situation and justifying the number of 21, and I guess I would just hope that we would, of course, we learn from the past, and, you know, we need to kind of keep grounded in where we've been, but I just would encourage the board and the administration to be forward-thinking. We are where we are right now. We have new information. We have, that was not available to us previously. We could spend, you know, we could be here all night kind of justifying how we got to this place. But we're here in a different place than we were back in the fall when this plan was in place. The numbers are different. The makeup of the students, we have new data that shows that this makeup of students is unique. I know that several board members have had 5th grade students with these teachers in the past, and I'm glad to hear that's been a positive experience for your children. But I encourage you to make these decisions as board members first and foremost, not primarily as parents, and to not personalize this decision. I know that's hard to do, but we elected you to kind of be objective decision makers and make decisions based on the facts and the data. So I encourage you to kind of stay that route and to think about what we can do in this moment going forward with the information that we have currently available to us, and also knowing that we have more than enough time to plan accordingly. We have, I don't know how many months, 4 months or so until these students enter the 5th grade. So, but that time, of course, includes summer, and so we want to make these changes sooner than later.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lots of people have one more.
Get me started and you won't shut me up. Julie Sigler again. I mean, I think as a parent, I can say I should have been in more board meetings. I should have been here earlier, which I have learned, hindsight 2020, I guess you could say. I think the general consensus, I think I've tried to talk to about every parent I could in the last couple weeks, emailing. If I didn't have their emails, I called them. What do you think about this? Give me your opinion. A lot of them, I think, have emailed you. I've asked that they just email you guys. And I mean, I think the general consensus was, well, they're not going to do anything anyway. Why are you wasting your time? I'm wasting my time because this is my life. These are my kids. And if I don't do it, then I've lost. And I can tell you all the people sitting in this room, some are full-time moms, some are part-time moms, some are not part-time mom, part-time working, full-time working, sorry. Some stay at home. But they all are actively involved with their kids. They do their part to make their kids, experience in school the best it can be. And I feel as though things have changed. Some numbers have come out and things have changed, and we're kind of seeing another situation here. And I think it'd be great to see some movement, because then I think the community, a lot of people are just done. They're like, nothing's going to change. You're wasting your time. And I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time. That I came here tonight, that I've called all these people, and that, that we can make a difference if we speak. And then more people come to board meetings and speak up, and then I think it would be a better school overall. So I think that's generally the goal for CCS, is to be the best school we can. And I think the only way we can do that is, all kind of rally behind you guys, and you guys rally behind us, and let's make good decisions. So I won't talk again.
Yes, go ahead.
Do I have to stand up or?
No, you don't. Just if you could state your name, though.
So my name is Kelly Devine. I have a 4th grader, and I have one that just graduated from CCS last year. As I'm listening to the discussion, what I'm wondering about is, as I understand it, the way that school is funded in Vermont is every town sends a bunch of money to Montpelier, right? And then Montpelier sends everybody a chunk back. And the chunk is per student. And I've been to some board meetings when my older son was in the school, where there was a couple of those years when the budget wasn't passed and it was kind of tough. And so it just makes me wonder why, if the optimal size, according to the state law that Sage referenced, is 24 or 25, and we're giving money to the state, and I understand that Charlotte is what they call a gold town. We give more than we get back from our state portion of our property tax. Why is it that we have to be okay with 28 or 29 kids in a class, which is above the average, when we know that other towns getting the same amount of money get a smaller class size? I just wonder how that really seems fair to the families in this town. We're all paying into this supposed fair and equitable system in Montpelier, and I think all we're asking for is that it's fair and equitable for our kids too.
Just for clarification, so the reason there's so much conversation this year during the legislative cycle around the funding formula is because of what you're saying. There are towns that have 5 kids, and it costs a ton of money. And as you know, there is some impact on the local town, but some of it gets distributed to everybody. But in terms of the education quality standards, when they say an average of 25 when taken together, that means you take all your 4th graders, 5th graders, 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, total number, divide by the number of teachers. And if you do that in Charlotte, you would get to 23.7. So I'm not saying that that's the right number, I'm just saying that's the real number. So in the education quality standards, they're not talking about individual classes. They're talking about the average class size if you average it all out together. And that is 23.7, and don't want to get into any kind of debate about whether that's the right number or not.
Is that for next year or this year?
For next
For
year,
next year.
as of enrollment
Right.
totals now.
Right.
So just to follow up, I mean, I'm gonna take some time after this meeting to take a look and probably write something back to the board, but I'd be very surprised if I could find very many towns in Vermont with class sizes of 28 in the 5th grade. Well, they have the data. The ladies have the data. I love these ladies. It's great.
Kristen, could I just get a clarification? There was a question that was previously asked about what's sort of the magic line between 28 and 29. And I know Audrey addressed it, but it's just really not clear to me what tips the scale there. She talked about like kids going to special needs or something, but can we get a clarification on that?
I think it was a myriad of input from special educators, the 4th grade classroom teachers, the special ed administrator, and any number you pick is going to be, somewhat random, I think, but the teachers felt comfortable with groupings of 28. It sounds like both the current 4th grade teachers and the receiving 5th grade teachers felt comfortable with 28. Had some hesitance once we went beyond that. Is that correct? Did that
That's
sum that
correct.
up? Okay.
I asked Audrey this question in our meeting, and I'd be curious to hear other people's responses. So the current 3rd grade classes, of which Andrew and I have a daughter, is a very small class, and they only need 2 classes for 5th grade. There's only 38 kids or something in that whole 3rd grade class right now. If that class had 60 kids and the class behind it had 60, what would you be recommending for the soon-to-be 5th grade?
We receive recommendations. We don't get them, so.
Okay, so Greg and Audrey, knowing if you had larger class sizes behind this, would you still put up the same recommendation?
Oh, do you mean because you'd be
You
setting up
knew
the
you'd have-
system
yeah.
for, it's such a hypothetical that.
Right, but I'd still like an answer. I mean, was this influenced knowing you had a small class coming in behind it and that this was one year you could just shove it through?
Well, I don't want personal things going back and forth, to Audrey, but we commissioned that configuration committee because we're trying to get a handle on what are the long-term needs of our school. What do we don't want to every year being, trying to make quick decisions and not be thinking strategically. So we wanted a 5-year plan. And so really, it was that 5-year plan. We waited a year to implement it because there were some things that were so different from what we've experienced at Charlotte Central School before. But this will be our 3rd year with the 5th grade set up that way. And so I can't speak for the whole board, but for myself, hearing that configuration committee report in March of 2012, and then based on the recommendations made by the administration that were in keeping with that, that's how we arrived at that decision. Had the numbers been different for those lower grades, I suppose that would have impacted that configuration committee's work, but they dealt with the numbers that we had and the projected numbers going forward.
Just keep in mind that you need to make the best decision for each grade, regardless of your experience with that class or those teachers, as Sage alluded to, or what the grades behind it are. I mean, as board members, you need to provide the best quality and level of education for each grade as it stands as that grade.
it is now.
Thank you.
I think Kristen made a good point, which is that, the board's job is not to do the job of the administrators. We, like any board, employ people who we think are good at what they do, take the information that they give us. There was, as Chris mentioned, a configuration committee which spent a lot of time and effort on recommendations, and that included community members, teachers, administrators. So it wasn't like the administrators hadn't thought things through and hadn't based it on, actual numbers and actual experience with slightly above average fifth grade classes prior. So this isn't my personal subjective judgment. It's the teachers had experienced slightly above average class sizes before, and that I'm sure went into the recommendation. So, again, I do think that a lot of thought was put into that, and I'm also curious, given what's new information since that study, at least as it was presented to us, with regards to the behavioral piece, if that is part of where we're drawing the line at 29, or if 29 is actually just independent of anything else, would have been sort of the red line, or if we already beaten that horse sufficiently.
That was our tipping point for us.
And that would have been the tipping point, irrespective of what we learned sort of through the course of this year on the behavior study data that you gave us.
From what we knew at the beginning of the year, yes, knowing that this group, there was concerns about the social-emotional behavior pieces back then too. I mean, this reinforces what's been happening, but again, when we met with both teams last week, the consensus was whether we have the students in 2 groupings or 3 groupings, we're still gonna have to, as a school, address the behaviors that we're seeing. The 2 groupings to 3 groupings, there are still concerns. And that was the consensus of all the people at the table there. So that is something we do have to work on for next year and throughout the rest of this year.
Yes, Joe?
So let's say that you maintain a 2-class size for next year's. Let's say in August, and in August, 4 kids show up that go into 5th grade and they pass your magic number. So, so basically, do we start with, let's say, 31 kids, 32 kids per class for the rest of the year, or are there any provisions to manage, or is it going to make a difference to the class instructions and the class size and things like that? So because from what I understand is that 29 is the magic number. If they are 29, then you break into 3rd class. But let's say they're all in 28, we start into the school year, suddenly 4 kids show up in 5th grade, so now you pass your 29 magic numbers. So, would that be just stay the way it is for the rest of the year, or was there anything else that will be done, or it is what it is?
I think it would likely be that she would recommend an additional teacher at that time. And who knows, we could get 10 kids show up in December and have to make some odd mid-year change. I mean, you always have that possibility with any grade, that there could be changes that warrant looking at staffing. We are constricted by the fact that we have a budget and have to work within that, but if you had additional kids show up, we would have to relook at those numbers. So before, if other people want to talk, go ahead, you haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
I haven't spoken yet. My name is Jason Taylor. I have a child in 4th grade and also in 1st and a preschooler. But I guess I'm maybe missing the point. I'm not understanding why, if there's room in the budget to hire another teacher, why is that not happening? And the other thing, and this is a graphic visual, but I'll throw this out there. If you ever witnessed a snake eating a pig, it's pretty gross, right? So that whole time you see that pig going down that snake, and it's all there. So to me, this is almost like we're throwing this group of kids, and I'll say that's the pig, even though they're all great kids, down the snake's mouth. And the teachers are the snake, and they're all wonderful, but this is the visual I can come up with. So first question is, and as a banker, this is what I deal with numbers all the time. If there's room in the budget, why not? To me,
room in budget.
Okay.
We do not have budgeted a 3rd teacher.
Okay.
If we add a 3rd teacher, we will need to cut somewhere else. And just to remind everybody, our budget barely passed.
Okay.
Fairly
But, yeah, I
She
was
had an
told,
unexpected returement.
Yeah.
There were comments in her notes.
That
So
she's
I-
found the money.
But I apologize,
We're still $27,000.
sure, okay. So, to me, maybe that's a budget item for next year, but I guess that's too late. But to me, it does seem like it's an issue of there's a smaller group of kids behind, and that's why this decision's being made. And to go back, Kristen, to your comment earlier about not wanting to make these types of decisions happen year to year to year, this same type of decision did happen last year with a group of kids that were pushed from a looping classroom to a non-looping classroom, so that's all I gotta say.
Okay, so, what does the board want, does anyone on the board want to refer anything to staff, take anything under advisement, want any future steps, or want to schedule a meeting regarding anything that we've just heard?
Well,
Clyde or Mark, go ahead.
I think the big piece seems to be the behavioral piece. I'd like to see the behavioral report, and after that, we can
Okay.
talk further.
Anything?
We're going to hear about the behavioral report tonight. I'll have some questions at that time, but they're appropriate to that time.
I'll put Eric on the spot before Susan. Is there anything that you want to?
I mean, I assume there's a probably 50-50 chance this comes back to us at some point. I mean, we're talking about one more student would put this back on the table.
And we could also lose some students too, and I know that Greg is also reaching out to those families, because we have information that some may not return, and that one may be coming back after being homeschooled last year.
So I guess I'm with the other board members. I think that because the behavior thing is sort of one of the key elements here, it's worth going through that.
Okay. Susan?
Yeah, I think we need to revisit it. I mean, it sounds like it's not just going to go away. So I don't know if we put it on the agenda for next month, or, if that's.
And our June meeting is typically just a business meeting, but maybe we can,
You could come
we
early.
can come
Or
early.
stay late.
And what time? It's 5:30.
5:30.
All right, so and will we have a planning meeting before that?
We
Or not
can.
typically?
Not typically, but we can, because usually the June
It's
business
just,
meeting
it's
is
just sort of a formality.
Right, but we can.
Okay, so maybe we can meet, and, maybe board members can let me know if, I think it starts at 5, well, it should be right on here. So next month's meeting, June 25th at 5:30, if you could let me know, I presume it'd be better for, any additional topics to be later rather than before that. Is that
that a Wednesday?
good to say? Yeah. Is that a Wednesday?
No, I don't know.
I don't-
It's a Wednesday.
What day is it, Kristen?
The 25th.
The 20,
It's a
it is a
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yes.
So later is better.
This business meeting is usually like half an hour.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you would start at 6 with your meeting. you wanna
So if
do
we
that.
were gonna add that to the agenda, we could, warn a meeting. We would still warn the meeting for 5:30 or warn it for 6?
Your meeting is going to get warned for 5:30. You
5:30.
will just have a different agenda. So when
Okay.
you warn the meeting, you warn the agenda.
Okay,
So
and maybe we can do something, if we end up doing that, we could through the school newsletter, let people know that 6 o'clock is.
So 6 o'clock in the
Well, let me, probably. Yeah, I think, probably. It'll be in the newsletter for sure.
Are you deciding when you're gonna discuss this next, on June 25th? I'm sorry, I'm confused what's happening right now. Is that what's being discussed, when this issue is gonna be considered next?
Yes,
This issue's just
this is
not
not
gonna
an
be looked
action,
at again until June 25th?
well, this is not an action item on we can't make decisions unless it's been properly warned.
How much
That's,
notice do you
that's
need?
state law. Well, we could call a special meeting if, we could call a special meeting. But it has not been the request of a board member to do that. We do want to look at the behavior data. It sounds like it's a consensus that we want to look at the behavior data and revisit possibly on the 25th.
What would warrant calling a special meeting other than a board member requesting it? I mean, I'm just curious what kind of attendance you've been getting at these meetings, and this seems like maybe it's a good attendance. That it
Oh,
might
this is
warrant
huge.
that. Yeah, so to me, it might warrant a special meeting,
Yeah.
and you as our board member should maybe consider that.
Thank you. Anything additional from the board regarding the need for?
There are intersecting issues here. The first thing I'm going to say should not be taken at the moment as any indication that I agree with you that we should hire another teacher. However, the difference between me and everybody north of here is that I do think it's within the board's purview to tell the administrators what to do. Because that is, in fact, what people elected us to do. But that brings me to the next point. There are 14 people in this room. And when you say you elected us, well, some of you may have voted for me, for example. Some of you may not have. The point is, there are a lot more people in Vermont, in Charlotte, who participated in these elections. And we all understand your concerns, but that alone at this point is not enough to justify changing what the administration has recommended. We're going to hear this evening about some behavior information, and there are some interesting questions around that. The thing about 28 or 29, it's imaginary. I mean, when you come down to it, you've heard an effort, a well-intentioned effort to explain it, but it's imaginary. I mean, 28, 29, 26, 27, 27, 28. I mean, the research that you allude to is not that specific. The research that you allude to also is not specific regarding the role of pairs, which is why we're going to find out more specifically what the pairs have to offer and how they'll mitigate whatever the effects of that class size might be.
I'm happy to share the specifics with you. I have some of the studies.
I'm sorry?
I'm happy to share some of the specifics with you. I just didn't want to.
Well, I mean, I've looked at a lot of research over the years on these subjects, and it's all over the place, and it's typical for people who are arguing for a particular position to cherry pick whatever research they think is appropriate. We all do it whatever side of an issue we're on. What the board has to do is make a decision, best intentioned decision based on everything that they hear. So I think this discussion has a ways to go, but in considering where it goes and how it turns out, you've got to be aware that there are a lot of factors that bear on this beyond the immediate size of these two classes.
Just on a quick side note, it's like my husband and I's favorite saying is, the answer is money, what's the question? I mean, and it's pretty much true for a lot of things. And I feel as though this is, I mean, I don't blame the board or the town. I mean, obviously we're pigeonholed into this financial situation by the state of how much money we get. But it's very I don't know how to remedy it. I mean, I know a school district like Stowe, I've looked on their website and they have an education fund that funds things like computers and iPads so that they can have more money for different things. And I would ask the board to maybe look into how we establish that, because I feel as though we could generate more funds if we knew that they were going to our kids. I mean, we're obviously all here because we want to do more, and if we're going to be pigeonholed and not, how do we get out of it, is the question that I have. Because, you know, obviously my tax dollars aren't going to do it, because they don't stay here, they go.
Thank you.
One other housekeeping thing. So, Kristen, you alluded to having to come up with the $27,000 if we were not to hire the two pairs and hire a third teacher, but Audrey outlines in here that she's already found places that she could fund it in the principal report. So it's done.
I guess, and as a follow-up to Sarah, I guess I'm confused because if Audrey basically recommended to you that she may ask for a third teacher, I would imagine that the board would build that into the budget as sort of a contingency, realizing that the numbers do change. And so I guess I'm confused as to why that wouldn't have been included in the budget because she clearly said, I may come back to you in a couple months and ask for this third teacher.
Maybe Elaine can speak to this. We haven't had the luxury of building in cushions in budget since they started failing a number of years ago. I think in the old days there was some fluff around, some extra things that we could find money for, but we have to budget pretty tightly. What did our budget pass by? A handful of votes.
A little below 51%.
Yeah.
15 votes.
15 votes. So we start working hard on the budget in September, so you should all come in September. We are working on the budget nonstop from September until the end of January, and looking really carefully at those numbers.
Have the teacher contracts been finalized? So the budget is like
No.
final?
No, fact-finding happened on Thursday, and we are expecting the fact-finders report June 15th.
So there may be some money in there if the raise comes in less than what you guys have budgeted.
Could be. That would be good news. All right, is there other?
Wait, just to, Sarah, I know the paragraph you're talking about in the principal's report, and yes, it identifies a couple places to save money, but it doesn't offset all of it. Their money would have to come from somewhere.
All right, maybe one more thing, and then we have a pretty full budget, or very full agenda, and including behavior.
I'm still stuck a bit on this financial piece. I'm remembering a situation, I think it was probably coming up on 3 years ago, when there was 2 kindergarten classes and 7 kids moved in over the summer. And Greg made a recommendation to the board to hire a third, what would be first grade teacher for this group of kids, which I thought was a fantastic decision. And so my understanding was that the board met in the summer, right, and approved this hiring of this additional teacher. And that's why that year we had to vote twice on the budget. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. There was an additional sum, there was the large budget, and then there's the 200.
That was not related.
It wasn't, okay. But my point in bringing that up is that it seems that in just a few years ago, we were in this situation and 7 kids moved in, and you, in my opinion, did the right thing and approved the additional teacher and found the funds. I don't know where those funds came from, but where there's a will, there's a way, right? And we just might need to think out of the box and think creatively. If we think it's the right thing to do for these 56 students, then I have full confidence that you'll be able to make that decision and find that money.
But there is no money to be found. I think that Greg did exactly what Audrey would need to do this time, which is take it from someplace else. And then hope that the price of fuel doesn't go up, the price of heating oil, all of that. You know what I mean? It is very tight, like Kristen said, much, much tighter than it used to be. And I remember when this happened. He didn't have the money in hand. He just said, here's the budget. We have to look. Maybe we're not going to use as much paper. Maybe we're going to say to the teachers, you know what? You need to cut back on some of these other things. Because there isn't a line in the budget that's more. And we're all sitting here, when whoever said maybe the teacher's contract will come in lower than what we hoped. Yeah, I'm sure everybody around the table's got their fingers crossed here. That's very unlikely to happen. So even then, let's say that comes in higher than what we expected. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to, in the fall, look at our budget and say, where can we find this? And 4 times a year in our schools, the principals meet with Bob Mason and Mike Nadeau, finance people, to scrub every line of the budget. Are we on track, yes or no? And if we're not, what needs to give someplace else? Am I characterizing this? Yeah, so we're really, I'm not saying that we wouldn't find it, because if it's the right thing to do, based on all of the things you've said, based on what's been said around the table, then people would say, of course we're going to do that. But it wouldn't be because we found money that was hiding someplace, because those days are gone. There is no money tree.
Well, then, the possibility exists that you could go back in time if you have a shortfall.
No,
No, you
you
can't.
can't do that.
You cannot.
The only area, Burlington notwithstanding, the only area that you really are legally allowed to overspend your budget is in special ed. That's the only area. We're not allowed to overspend our budget.
I'm saying go back and ask the town for more money
No.
to fund the shortfall.
No,
No, you're not
you
allowed.
can't do that. You get what you get on, when the town votes the budget, you hope on town meeting day, they vote in favor of the budget, and that's what you have for that next year.
Can't hold a special vote.
No.
Can we raise funds?
Kickstarter.
Maybe
All
this is a good.
How much do we need to
thing
raise?
with the
20 or
union.
is that? Yeah.
So negotiations are over now. We've had fact-finding last Tuesday. Both sides submitted their briefs, and now we're waiting 30 days to get the fact-finders' report back. At which point there will be another
10-day cooling
10
off
day,
period.
10 day to negotiate before it becomes public, and then 30 days to cool off after that.
I'm sorry, I hate to belabor this, but is there no contingency fund? Say the roof fell in, it's cost $100,000 to fix and it has to happen.
Well, so the board has fund balance that they can apply. Then they would have to go to the town, though, to ask permission to use that money to pay for the roof.
And you can also
Or
go out to
different
bond
for-
for building projects. You're
Well,
allowed
that
to,
was my point, to go back to the town and
but
say
you
that
can't
there's
for
a shortfall.
general education expenses. So you have to ask for everything you want when you set the budget at the end of January, and that's what you have.
So this lack of funds would be a great negotiating point.
But we're done, yeah. I mean, hopefully we're
For the
done
teacher
negotiating.
contract. But you're done with that?
Well, fact-finding has been completed, we're just awaiting the report, and then, I mean, hopefully things come out and we can all agree to a contract, but we shall find out in a month or so.
If they strike, we'll all teach.
All right, good. Well,
For
thank you all
free.
for coming.
For
I know
free.
it's frustrating. I was a parent sitting out there, in your seat, and I know it's frustrating. So I hope you'll all come to budget meetings in the fall. It helps get the input, for us to get the input earlier rather than later. 4.0 presentations, 4.1 kneecap assessments. So, are we having a screen?
I think we need a screen.
Okay. You can all stay and watch, see how great our kids are doing.
How are the fifth grade scores?
The fifth grade writing went up.
Writing went up, we're doing well.
Must be that small class size.
27.
Yeah?
All right, I'm gonna just turn off the light. It makes it easier. Is everyone good with me turning off the light right now?
Okay, so tonight we're going to present the CCS kneecap results from 2013. And before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge Sue Hopner's support in helping create our graphs, Shannon Spellman, our literacy specialist, and Stephanie Sumner, our interim math coordinator, who helped us prepare this presentation.
Can you see?
Can you see?
your type?
Oh, do you need the light back on?
Maybe one? Yeah.
Is there a way to turn them half
Or half or one?
Yeah, we can't read. Yeah, no, I only turned one.
Sorry.
That's fine. Well,
Sorry.
people, we have to hand out ahead of time.
So again, I'd just like to share this continuous assessment loop, and basically our student performance is driven by a continuous instruction and assessment loop. We instruct students, we assess them, and then our assessment helps inform our instruction. We may revise our instruction, provide more differentiated based instruction, and then again we assess again. So it's a continuous loop throughout the cycle.
You probably remember this graphic from previous presentations, and basically the idea is we hopefully aren't making database decisions just based on one data point or one type of data. We use the word triangulate, but really the more data points we have to make instructional decisions programmatically and day-to-day instructional decisions, the better. So this triangle indicates that we have classroom-based assessments, both formative and summative. You know, the formative day-to-day ongoing directional feedback assessments. We have our common CSSU assessments that are part of our common assessment system across the SU things like the benchmark assessment system, the Bridges assessments, those are common assessments, and then our state assessments, which are now NECAP, and which will soon be SBAC in reading and math. NECAP will continue in science.
Okay, just our presentation overview. Again, we're going to be looking at our NECAP assessments and review of specifically the CCS NECAP results and our observations. I just want to make one note that our state comparisons that we've done in the past are not valid this year because the SBAC piloting done across the state, there were about 27 schools who participated in that pilot. So they did not participate in the NECAP testing, making the results unrepresentative of all the students in Vermont. And that's really for reading, writing, and math. Our science NECAP is still valid. So we'll be doing state comparisons for science, but not for reading, writing, and math. We're also going to share our conclusions, discuss our improvement initiatives, and take a look at some of our local assessments that we're using in-house.
So this is just a little key to help inform when we're looking at the other charts. This is a blow up of the bars that you'll see on the charts that come later in the presentation. And essentially, NECAP is scored in four proficiency levels, indicated there. So the line between 2 and 3 is where you indicate proficient. Usually what we're looking at is how many are proficient or above versus how many are below proficient. Significant change, so when you're looking, changes 3 percentage points or more, you can start to think about, okay, that's a change. And a trend, we're looking for a pattern of change over 3 years or more. So this slide shows an overview of 3 through 8th grade NECAP performance in all tested areas. So the slide's a little crowded, but I think it would help you if you think in terms of sets of 2. So these are all 2-bar sets of data. The first bar is CCS, the second bar is CSSU, and in case you can't see the screen well, again, this is 3rd through 8th grade students combined into one big group. So this is in reading, 3rd through 8th grade. You'll see, obviously, very robust scores in Charlotte, also in the SU. Same for math, these next 2 bars. Writing, okay, Charlotte versus the SU. This is 5th grade writing. 8th grade writing, Charlotte versus the SU. 4th grade science, the one area where we don't exceed the SU. We'll talk more about that later. We'll dig into that a little bit more. And 8th grade science, and if you were here for the SU board presentation, you heard that 8th grade science results ranked highest in the state. So CCS NECAP performance exceeds the supervisory union performance in most areas, with the exception of 4th grade science. At CCS, students are very robust in 5th grade writing, and even more outstanding in 8th grade. And NECAP, across the board, the NECAP data really speaks to a robust K-8 instructional program. Again, we're going to dig a little bit more into that science, that 4th grade science. Now, the 4th grade science, we're looking at last year's 4th graders, this year's 5th graders. Audrey, oh, did I skip a slide?
Yeah, I think this is yours.
Okay. So this is students proficient or above by gender on the NECAP. So in the reading and math, this is 3 through 8 combined. And what you'll see is there aren't significant gender differences. Math is a small difference here. And writing, we're really happy to see that there's not a significant difference at all in 5th grade. And a very small difference here in 8th grade. In science, we really need to dig more into this disparity between the females not performing as well as the boys in the 4th grade science. Again, this highlights that the CCS K-8 program builds upon the content instructional program year to year. We are happy to report that we are closing the gap of gender disparity in writing. We're gonna look more into the longitudinal data a bit later in the presentation in terms of the writing.
Okay, now we're going to look at some reading results. This slide shows an overview of reading kneecap performance for grades 3 through 8. And overall, the performance of students at CCS on the reading kneecap is consistently strong. I know it's hard to read the numbers, but I have some numbers here. 88% to 92% of students achieving proficiency or better over the last 8 years. So they're very strong. And just wanted to note that this data reflects a different group of students each year. And it's more of a big picture program. For example, when looking at the grade 4 results, reflecting on instruction in grades K to 3 rather than a picture of what happens in 4th grade. And then when we look at 8th grade results, it's really a reflection of K to 7 instruction being and the performance for over those 6 years. And again, this data shows the power of our K to 8 instructional programming at CCS. The next slide is an overview of reading kneecap performance for all students who are considered in the lower SES or socioeconomic status students, including students in other subgroups such as students with IEPs. And again, this is results over grades 3 to 8 in reading. And this is the first year in which this subgroup has not aligned with or outperformed this subgroup across the supervisory union. We do have a decline in performance of this subgroup for the past 2 years, as you can see. And this information is actually what's driving the driving force for our new action plan that we're going to be presenting to you at our board retreat in a few weeks. Just wanted to mention we can only talk about this subgroup across the grades 3 to 8 because due to the small sample size at each grade level. And again, within CCS, we are looking at the information by grade level to examine instructional program implications for this group of students, this subgroup of students.
So this next slide is kind of similar themed here in terms of a negative trend, and that is around students in a subgroup. And this is a subgroup of students who have IEPs, individual educational programs. So students deemed eligible for special education. And again, we're looking at very small numbers of groups in the cohorts here, so we can't report out on grade level data. And that's also why you see big jumps in data, but we are very concerned about the trend here, and we need to dig really into looking at the students in this subgroup and analyzing this more closely to determine what steps we can take to improve this. Each year the subgroup consists of different students, of course, and I already mentioned the fact that the cohorts are very small, so we can't share grade level data. Yes. Okay. So 5th grade writing. Overall, the performance of students at CCS in the 5th grade writing kneecap is very strong. You'll notice that there is no data for 2009. As Molly mentioned in the previous presentation at the SU board, that was a pilot year for new writing prompts. So the test was not given that year. Well, actually, the test was administered. They didn't use the scores. 5th grade writing scores exceed those of the supervisory unions, with 83% of CCS students proficient or better, as compared to 69% for this SU. It should be noted that the data shows our students have improved steadily over the past few years, which points to some improved instructional programming. 3 years, again, it does indicate a trend.
Now we'll take a look at our writing kneecap scores for grade 8. Overall, the performance of CCS on the 8th grade writing kneecap is strong. 8th grade results from 2013 continue to grow, with 91% of CCS students at the proficient or better levels as compared to 75% in the supervisory union. And again, we're seeing a trend, or hopefully a trend. We see 2 years of growth, and hopefully we'll continue to see growth, and we'll see a trend in that, which could hopefully show an impact from our instructional program. We hope that continues to grow.
Slide.
No, I think we're all set. I think we're going to shift now to math, and we're going to be looking at the overview of kneecap math performance in grades 3 to 8. Overall, CCS students have continued to perform well on the kneecap, with only slight changes year to year. We do have a slight change this year, and this represents a small number of students, which can be expected when looking at different groups of students each year. The consistency with year-to-year performance of our students speaks directly to the strength of our K-8 math programming and instruction.
That slide, that's not the right slide for what you're reading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
What happened?
Math grades.
That was it, that was it. That was it. That's,
Okay, it just doesn't match the
Because-
image.
because that's the wrong slide. We gotta fix it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, this data includes all students who are considered in the lower SES group as per Vermont NECAP, including students in other subgroups such as students on IEPs. Both CCS, so that means basically these are all students in this, identified in this subgroup of students of lower socioeconomic status. So that could also include students in other subgroups, like students identified special education eligible. Both CCS and the supervisory union saw a decline in the performance of this subgroup. This is data that we continue to reflect and act upon in our programming and data reviews and professional development. Our work with best practices focuses on implementing research-based instructional practices that support all types of learners, including those in this subset. Our data does not reveal a trend up or down here, but we are concerned when we're seeing, flat, really strong data when you take all the students together in reading. We're seeing all the students together in writing with an upward trend, and we're seeing students in these subgroups struggling. So that is an area we want to dig into. And again, because these are small cohort sizes, we can't report out on grade level data.
Okay, this slide shows the math NECAP performance for students on IEPs in grades 3 to 8. And just to clarify, this data includes all students who are on IEPs, including students in other subgroups, such as students in the lower SES group. A student may or may not have an IEP that specifically addresses math, but due to the smaller size of this subgroup, as Greg mentioned, differences in performance of just a few students can impact the combined results to a much greater degree than that of an aggregated results, thus making it important to complete grade level analysis as every year. The students' needs and documented disabilities impact our results in this subcategory. Again, we're continuing to see little growth with our students in math for grades 3 to 8 for students on IEPs. We are working on several in-house initiatives to address and support all learners, including this group of students, as well as working on a supervisory union initiative or discussion group to analyze practices that are showing effectiveness in other settings from what we're using to support students in mathematics. And we will continue to do that. Okay, this slide shows CCS students entering grade 9 and taking advanced courses as a freshman at CVU. Core Geometry and Math Seminar are two courses that are considered advanced courses for 9th graders. And CCS students attending CVU continue to participate at increasing rates in Core Geometry and Math Seminar in 9th grade. We are pleased with this trajectory, and this data demonstrates success in our goal to better prepare and provide Algebra 1 to all interested 8th graders over the past few years. And we're very excited to see the number of students taking Geometry and Math Seminar as opposed to Algebra 1 as 9th graders, and that continues to grow.
So as mentioned previously, unlike in reading and math, all Vermont 4th and 8th graders and 11th graders are still taking the science NECAP assessments and will continue to do so through the spring of 2016. We're not exactly sure what's going to come after that, but there's talk of a different assessment after that. Therefore, this does allow us to compare our results with those to the state. This slide highlights the results of 4th grade over the last 6 years. It's important to note that each year of data represents a different group of 4th graders. So this group that you're looking at for 2013 is last year's 4th graders. So the data on this slide shows that 63% of CCS 4th graders were proficient or above on the science NECAP, which reflects a significant decrease in proficiency as compared to previous cohorts. The 4th grade continues to outperform the state, which had 48% proficiency and higher, yet did not outperform the SU, who had 67 proficient or above. These results are being looked at closely by our science committee. It is important to know that this represents a different group of students than last year. I did some cross-analysis to see how this group of students did in terms of cohort to cohort in math and reading, and noticed also an 11-point percentage drop in math from 4th grade. Reading was more even. So we're going to dig into that a little more. But that indicates some differences in the cohort. There's 11% difference in proficiency levels is significant. So that's just, okay, that's all I want to say about that. Okay, so this slide breaks down the science kneecap analysis last year by domain. There are 4 domains covered in the kneecap: the domain of physical sciences, earth and space science, life science, and science inquiry. It highlights that 4th graders, again, performance within the 4 science domains as compared to the SU and state. We do well compared to the state in all areas. Analysis of performance within these domains is used to drive future science instruction. In fact, you'll hear a little more later about how our new science action plan is focused on inquiry. That continues to be our most challenging domain for CCS 4th graders and their SU and Vermont counterparts. And again, an area of our focus will be inquiry on our science action plan, which will be shared with the board at the June retreat. So this is 4th grade science ranking in the state. So this slide shows the Vermont school science ranking for grade 4. CCS was ranked 37th in the state for 4th grade science scores, which again, a big dip from the previous years in which we were ranked, 2012 we were ranked 11th. Okay, and the highlighted ones here are the other SUs. So there's Williston, Shelburne, there's Charlotte, the other schools in the SU, excuse me. Williston, Shelburne, Charlotte, and Heinsberg.
So these 4th graders have benefited from the sort of shift on focus in science inquiry, right? It started when that shift happened a few years ago, right?
I would say it really has begun more solidly over the last 18 months. Yeah. You're welcome.
Okay, now we're going to look at the science kneecap results for 8th grade. And we're looking at, over the last 6 years, how we compared between the CSSU, the supervisory union, as well as the state. And the data on this slide shows that achievement levels for CCS 8th graders exceeds the state and SU by as much as 22 to 43%. Overall, the performance of 8th grade students at CCS is consistently strong. 45 to 76% of our students achieve proficiency or better over the last 6 years. This year, we performed 76% versus the supervisory union at 58% and the state at 33%. It should be noted, again, that this data reflects a different group of students each year. And when we're looking at the 8th grade results, we're reflecting on instruction from grades 5 through 8 rather than a picture of what's happening in 8th grade. As the 8th graders take this actually in May, they just completed the kneecap for science last week.
Similarly, and I failed to mention and should have, the 4th grade kneecap is measuring science understanding and knowledge on standards from kindergarten through 4th grade. It's not based on what 4th grade learning.
Similar to the 4th grade results for domain results for science, we perform well in the physical science, earth space science, life science, and science inquiry compared to the supervisory union as well as the state. The one area that we're going to be focusing on, as well as documented in our action plan, is the science inquiry piece, because again, this is an area that is continuing to be challenging for us, our students, the CSSU students, as well as in the state. So in a few weeks, again, we'll be addressing how we're going to look at science inquiry within the school. And the last slide, this slide shows the Vermont School Science ranking for grade 8. I'm pleased to share again that CCS was ranked first in the state again in grade 8 science scores in 2013. We were first last year. So we hope we see a trend, and next year we continue that high honor of being number 1 in the state.
So some takeaways from our analysis so far from the kneecap data. And that is, students in the subgroups of lower socioeconomic status and students on IEPs. We really need to drill down into those 2 subgroups, look at the item analysis and the release tasks. The release tasks, kneecap releases about 20 to 25% of each assessment each year. So you can look at the assessments, you can find out exactly which student answered what problem on those release tasks incorrectly or correctly, and what answer they chose, and really drill down to figure out what is tripping up these students in these lower socioeconomic groups and the students on IEPs. What we also noticed, and as you probably saw in some of the graphs, is that the band of students in the lowest category, substantially below, has grown in some of those subgroups in some of the assessments. So that's an area that we really need to drill down, especially when you see opposing trends or flat trends going across when you take the group as a whole. Fourth grade science is another area of focus, and the board will learn more about the action plan in June, but the new action plan foci, which will carry through the next 3 years, is going to be around science inquiry. So some strengths that definitely come through in the NECAP data is that CCS grade 3 through 8 students excel in reading, math, and science overall, and that writing results are strong as compared to the state, with a clear upward trend emerging in 8th grade. Again, this is just the same slide we showed earlier. We wanted to put it here again for context because we're about to just share a little bit of, give you a little snapshot of some of the common CSSU assessments that we look at to inform programming and instruction.
Okay, and to the left in that box, these are some examples of local assessments that are administered throughout the year as part of our CSSU Common Assessment System that we use to inform instruction and identify students in needs of additional supports. I'm going to focus on 2 local assessments, the BAS, which stands for the Benchmark Assessment System. It's Fontes and Pinnell created it, and this assessment measures decoding, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension skills. And we use this for both formative and summative assessment. And as you can see, the chart highlights the performance of our current first grade students over the past 10 months. And this information is used during data reviews and guides our instructional practices. As you can see in kindergarten at the end of the year, 77% of students were at or above grade level proficiency. When we returned in the fall, we saw a little drop in their performance at or above grade level on the BAS. And in the winter, we're seeing an upswing again, and we're hoping the results from the spring assessment will continue to see an upward trend. The next local assessment that we use is called the Degrees of Reading Power. You may hear your 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th graders say we took the DRP today, and this is an assessment of how well students understand the meaning of text. It's administered twice a year, and it's used to ensure we have an understanding of students' comprehension, their understanding of text, and it focuses on vocabulary and background knowledge. And students who are making approximately 1 year's worth of growth would maintain their at or above proficiency level, should maintain that. Therefore, we would expect that the percentage of students would stay similar across the years, indicating students are making 1 year's growth. So we're really trying to look at the trend of growth, 1 year's growth throughout the administration of this. This chart indicates when we look at, this is for 7th and 8th grade students, that our students typically make 1 year's worth growth with some years as more than 1 year's growth. So we're always looking for the trend of 1 year's growth for each grade level. So those are just some examples of local assessments that we use throughout the year to help inform our instruction.
So another local but universal across the SU assessment is the on-demand writing assessment. And one feature of a assessment that you do locally would be that it helps predict or could help predict performance on other assessments like the NECAP. So this shows the percent of students scoring the same or above on the NECAP as they did on the on-demand writing assessment the previous spring. So what's interesting is in 5th grade, 89% of students scored the same or better on the NECAP as they did on the 4th grade on-demand writing. And 92% scored the same or better on the NECAP as they did on the on-demand writing assessment. So that can indicate that there's correlation between the on-demand rubric that we're using and the scoring process and the tasks and how students do on those tasks as a predictor to how they're going to do on the NECAP. Now, what's going through my brain right now and what we're starting conversations about is how can we do that? How can we find similar probes or assessments in the area of science? So what can tell us sooner in third grade, perhaps probing throughout the year, as what can serve as a predictor about how we think students may do on the science kneecap. So that's one thing we're going to look as a program enhancement.
Okay, we'd like to move now to our CCS improvement initiatives. Last month, Greg and I did a presentation on our multi-tiered systems of support, our response to intervention and instruction, our instruction and intervention model. And so we're going to continue focusing on this model to support our students. Again, we're going to emphasize best first instruction for all students, which we consider tier 1. For students who need additional support from a literacy specialist or math coordinator, we're going to base our interventions for students who are not making expected improvements based on research-based programs. We're going to progress monitor students to determine effectiveness of the interventions and monitor student growth. And as we mentioned last month, that we would like to continue to enhance our MTS system. We talked a little bit about our Kid Talk system, the EST system, and our Tier 3 supports. And I hope you remember the nice flow chart we showed you and how we use both sides of the system where we're looking at data reviews and looking at all students in the general curriculum. And then if we have students who need supports in literacy, math, and have behavior pieces, and how we look at that model. So we're going to continue to enhance our MTS system as we continue working on that. Another initiative is our math initiative. As you know, we talked a little bit about this during our curriculum reviews this year, and we talked about the best practices in math. We're going to be going into our third year for our studio cohort for grades K to 2 and 6 through 8, and then we'll be going into our second year for our best practices studio for grades 3 to 5. We're going to continue to implement our Bridges and Connected Math project math programs, and we're going to continue the phase-in of the materials that are aligned with the Common Core state standards for both Bridges and CMP. We've been able to and will continue to increase weekly instructional minutes in math in grades 5 to 8. As mentioned previous, my first year here, we were only teaching math 4 days a week for 50 minutes, and a change was made 3 years ago where math is taught 5 days a week in all grades 5 through 8. And all 8th grade students will continue to have access to Algebra 1 through Connected Math Project.
So some of our improvement initiatives continued here. Elementary science instruction with a focus on inquiry. Again, a new action plan focus area. The new action plan will focus on areas of science inquiry implemented over the next 3 years. Already reaching out to some colleagues at Williston who've had some success over the last few years on improving student performance in the subgroups that we're looking at right now to benefit from the collective expertise and capitalize on successful practice that has been implemented in the SU. Teachers in grades 1 through 4 will link explicitly informational writing with a science unit. Let's continue with our school-wide focus on the writing process across content areas and continued focus on the implementation of the Common Core state standards. And we're ready for questions at this point.
Any questions from the board?
I was going to go back to the 4th grade science testing, but you're presenting in June on the action plan, is that the? Yes. Okay, I'll wait till then.
But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, it's concerning that that's the dip. Science is the new focus of Common Core standards, and already our 4th graders are starting to see a little dip. I prefer that. When I see the action plan, I'll have more questions.
I guess I have a question regarding that dip. Is that, so it's, obviously it's a different group of 4th graders every year. Is that, if you track these kids backwards, is that a trend in their history,
Well,
or is?
As I said, when I did the check with the reading and the reading and the math, there was an 11-point dip in the math from cohort to cohort, which is pretty significant. That's the same group of kids as compared to the previous group of kids, and also a dip in reading, not as significant. So there is something about that cohort, but you know, we're not just going to stop there. We're not happy with those results. We have to dig into the programming piece. And you know, the focus has been, over the last few years of our professional development, has been around reading and writing and math. Specifically really math and writing. And we're doing really well in those areas, with the exception of those subgroups that we really need to look at. But we have to turn more attention to science, especially K-4.
Yeah, not to belabor it, but I mean, we have a parent community, a lot of whom were science majors in college, so we don't have anyone here, but we have at previous meetings, parents really raising, you know, their concern. So, but I know we'll get some more information. I know we're doing what we can to improve that, but.
I have a question about the SBAC. So when you switch to that,
Yes.
how many years will it take, you know, like kind of to know if, you know, like the first year you kind of throw out those results, right? Like, or you don't use them.
All we can do, I'm thinking about our first year is see how do we do compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
Right.
How are they going to be scored? What's the,
I don't know. All I do know that the turnaround on returning results will supposedly be much quicker. I mean, we wait months for kneecap results, and apparently SBAC results will turn around much quicker, in weeks rather than months.
Inputting data from forms.
Right.
It's all
Already.
so
Right.
tell me again what you think the future of the science kneecap is?
I can share a little bit about that. We're going to be using the science kneecap till the spring of 2016. We're being told that they may have something new for the spring of 2017, but we're not sure.
Who is they?
I want to say the people who are creating the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards. So we've been told, they're kind of vague with that piece, but we've been told kneecap science will be done until spring 2016.
I have another question about, you were using other forms of assessment besides kneecap,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on some of your slides there. So about how many days are kids spending, you know, on average, you know, per school year on test taking? Not that they're doing that all day, but just, you know, kind of, is this, you know, how is it sort of set up by the classroom teacher that this is a testing day, or, I'm just curious about that.
It really depends on the grade.
Uh-huh.
Because probably the best way to answer that would be to sit with you with the Common Assessment System, which is a big chart that says in this grade, these are the assessments we do in fall, winter, and spring. And I could share with you how long assessments take. So it varies. And it also varies the age of the student. So like the benchmark assessment system is a comprehensive reading assessment that in second grade in the fall, we want to give it to most of our students or all of our students, and that takes a certain amount of time. In fourth grade, in the fall, we just administer it to students who didn't reach the benchmark in the spring. So the requirements at different grade levels are different. So the answer to your question would be different
Yeah,
for
and if
every
you look
grade.
at the actual slide here, we did share the assessments that we did share. For example, we said fact fluency is 3 times a year. The BAS is, depending on the student's needs. Science inquiry task is once a year. The DRP, the degrees of reading power, is twice a year. But again, it would be good to look at the snapshot for each grade. We try to give you there a little look at what the times a year we do those, the frequency.
And are those given by their classroom teacher, or is somebody else coming into the room to do that with them?
Mostly the classroom teacher. Sometimes our literacy specialist and intervention team helps out with the benchmark assessment system because it's one-on-one. But we have a belief that the teacher is the best person to give the assessment because they're going to glean the most from the results when they're the ones administering it. So that, and you know, what I'm happy to say is that Molly and the literacy and the math coordinators and the TILT committee spent a lot of time looking at the assessments that are on that assessment system. And in fact, this year's assessment system is different than last year's and doesn't include a whole battery of assessments called AIMSweb, which we used to administer. And the reason we moved away from that is because we decided the time it takes to give those and what they're giving us as a result, it's not worth the time. So we're constantly looking at that, and are the assessments we're using giving us valuable information?
Sandy, while I'm thinking about it, would you send me hard copies, please, of both the CSSU presentation and ours in color? Thank you.
Oh, they didn't get passed out.
I'm sorry, we forgot to send it to you. Right here.
Which one is this?
This
This
is
is
our
this one,
local
but,
program.
so Sandy sent him CSSU.
Does anyone want one?
I gave some extras.
Oh, you do, okay.
You guys got one, you know?
They got the black and white.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're good. 5.0, reports to the board. 5.1, principals report. I don't know if you want to go over some highlights, and then we have retirements and farewells. Or do you just want questions on your report?
I guess there's been a fair amount of conversation already about the.
About enrollment for fifth, for incoming fifth grade.
Just, I'll take a minute to highlight the work of the safety team this year. We've added, this year, I feel like we've improved the team by adding parents. We added 2 parents to the safety team this year. The safety team has met once a month, and it's one of those committees this year where we feel like we've made steady progress and done some new things that haven't been done in previous years. This just highlights one, and that is a clear the halls drill happening during a lunch or recess. So that's basically a situation where we need to get people out of harm's way. And since we've been here, and from people we've spoken to, in their memory, they can't remember when that kind of drill has occurred during a lunch or recess period. And that's something we need to be prepared for. So we spent some time as a committee figuring out what do we need to do to make that happen. What are some of the systems we're going to use. We had some input from our state trooper friends. So every time we do a new drill, we find, okay, there are things that happen during the drill that we didn't expect. And what are we going to do differently next time? So I'm just celebrating a little bit the work of that team, and also the fact that now there's parent participation, which has added a nice voice.
Great. So, retirements and farewells?
Well, are we moving on, because included in the report here is the behavioral report.
Yeah, I'm just going down that's.
Oh, is that next? Sorry,
Yeah.
I missed.
We can share, we didn't have actually included in the report when we were agenda planning, but we can share that Pam Piper, our math coordinator, is retiring this year. Ann Mason, our triple E teacher, is retiring. And Maureen Little, our 6th grade Alpha 6 teacher, is retiring this year.
We thank them, and we will thank them again later in the year. All right, behavior management data. Do you want to do an overview, or do you want questions from us?
One thing I want to say about this behavior data, and this is a systemic thing that we need to address, and as we were starting to look at this data with the climate team and also with our care team, and the people who make up the care team are all the administrators, the school counselors, the planning room facilitator, the school nurse, our substance abuse professional. I think that's everybody. So when those 2 groups looked at this data, what came up was the fact that we needed to do a booster professional development piece around the referral system, around the process of referrals. Because inevitably what we find is that different teams use referrals differently. So, and that one takeaway from looking at this data is that we need to look at the data more often, going throughout the year, so that we are able to sort of calibrate a little bit, well, what the patterns that we're seeing throughout the year, and find out how much is due to processes and people using referrals different, and how much are legitimate behavior trends. So we've already started to plan a piece in our August pre-service around that. So that's an important thing to know, that when you're looking at this data by grade level, and again, I'm not saying this to undermine what you're looking at, but I just want to say it because it's the grade levels are teams, and those teams have certain practices around you using referrals. And I can't say with a high degree of confidence that everybody's using the referral process the same way. So that's something that we want to work on in terms of being able to really hold on to the data and say, we know that everyone's using the process and has that line of this is a referral and this isn't a referral.
Calibration.
Calibration.
Yeah.
Can you speak that a little bit then? Like what kind of disturbance raises to the level of a referral?
Typically, it's a behavior that's either, it could be it could be a couple of different scenarios, Eric. It could be what you'd consider a minor behavior, like a student in, let's say it's a student is interrupting in the classroom. Typically, that's a behavior that a teacher, is part of a teacher's realm they're going to be students who interrupt. However, when the teacher tries X, Y, and Z, and then tries A, B, and C, and the behavior is chronic or escalating, then there'll be a referral to say, hey, help me out with this. That's happening. So that's one instance. It could be repeating sort of minor instances that become chronic despite interventions. Another instance would be immediate, like if a student hits another student. If there's a physical act, that's an automatic referral. Typically, a disrespect in a setting like the lunchroom or cafeteria that's observed by a supervisor. It could be student-to-student disrespect or student-to-adult disrespect. Usually that's an automatic referral. But I think what we're finding is that not everybody's, there's some subjectivity to that's a referral or that's not a referral. Or the teacher who says, I got this. I'm on this, even though I know what my next step is. And what we want to make sure is that, but the data is still important because we want to know what programmatically we should be doing. And I think what we know we're doing more of now is with some proactive use skills pieces. And in the elementary school, I'll speak to Vicki Nelson's use skills and use fourth grade as an example because that was a big topic. One of the things we noticed this year, early in the year, is that there was a larger number of instances that involved what's called relational aggression. And you'll notice in that fourth grade data, as I started to break it down, if you look at the classroom data, it's about 22 referrals over 8 months. So when you start to break that down, that's about 3 referrals a month, on average, which could break down to about 1 referral per classroom per month, because there's 3 classrooms in that team right now. So just to put that number, yes, it's the highest number, but just to put it in context. But you'll notice when you look at the gender breakdown, almost all behavior categories, the boys lead the girls. There are more behavioral referrals for boys and girls in almost all settings. But if you look at the fourth grade classroom data, it's 50-50. So there's 8 students that make up that data, 22 referrals in the classroom, 4 boys, 4 girls, which is interesting. And when I started to speak to a few minutes ago, was that piece around we were seeing some relational aggression. So what that means is sort of, the social stuff that can be under the radar, that can be hurtful and create an unsafe environment for kids, even though it's subtle, like an eye roll or an offhanded comment or someone being excluded. And when that data started to come back from the teachers, immediately, there was a conversation with Vicki and the team and Mike and I, and Vicki's designing use skills lessons around the social aggression pieces and getting into those classes and talking to the whole class and talking with the groups of girls. So just to put that fourth grade piece into some context, but it is interesting to note the boy-girl equality there around that setting.
Yeah, just while we're on that table, you said you're breaking down the 84 referrals. I think it only came out to like 70. Was there another category or?
So when you were adding up the fourth grade referral numbers, it doesn't add up to 84?
No.
No, I'll have to check that, Eric.
Are we allowed to ask questions in the audience?
Yeah, let's just see if the board has questions first. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to me, that breakdown, and I wonder if part of it is teachers through trainings are better able to catch that subtle girl stuff that maybe wasn't reported out before. I mean, it's there. I have a daughter. It's there. But I don't recall the numbers for her age group being anything close to 50-50 for any category. Does anyone up here have a question? Or?
I guess the obvious question would be just to try to square, like you said, the data can be a little bit subjective in terms of what sort of qualifies as a referral, but you know, the one per classroom per month seems not to square with a lot of the audience participation from earlier in the night. It sounded like one per classroom per day, and there may have been some emotion around that, but you know, is there other stuff going on that's not captured in these numbers that would sort of fill in some of those that
The sense I got, Eric, and I can't speak for the parents, but the sense I got was that some of the people in the audience were actually reacting to the numbers, and that they had read this report before coming to the meeting and were reacting to the numbers in this report. I have not had an unusual I haven't had unusual level of involvement with the fourth grade in terms of behavior, or an unusual number of parent contacts. In fact, it's been fairly low in terms of parent contacts around fourth grade behavior or involvement in terms of intense behavior consequences. So I got the sense that some people were actually reacting to numbers that they read here.
So two questions about the 84 number. One, I would wonder, has that improved over the year? Was it 30 in October, then dropped off towards the end of the year for that grade? Or was there one incident that maybe was a referral of a bit large group, whether the number is 84 or 70? 84 is a large number, not unprecedented, given some of the previous numbers. So I'd be interested in hearing what data.
Yes, we have a month-by-month school-wide, but actually from our last meeting, one of our takeaways is to get month-by-month.
Yeah, so
by grade level.
Yeah, just for that, for that particular.
And that particularly long winter, might have had an effect, the indoor recesses and stuff like that. And then it's so hard to look at those numbers and not, know what they really mean. It's like they just seem so ambiguous. Maybe, from my perspective, maybe one teacher is referring more than, like others. So it's just kind of like this, or maybe it's the same couple of kids, so it's sort of this, I don't feel like there's much I can do with that number, it just seems like it's kind of, like you said, it's hit or miss, but, and then is cyberbullying anywhere, like where would that fit in? Does Vicki Nelson have to deal with that often, or is that?
We actually had, the last 2 days, we actually had Trooper Ben Katz, who's been helping us out, doing some guest presenting on the topic of cyberbullying and basically internet safety, and not just internet, but personal handheld devices and cell phone safety.
I could say that it's more at the middle level with the older students who have access to iPhones and things, so you're seeing more of that.
We did have a guest presenter earlier this year. It was a free presentation offered by the state. It's called Technicool, and he presented in 4th through 8th?
It's 4th through 8th grade.
And spent about 50 minutes with every class, and that was a state endorsed program. He was actually excellent, provided a lot of Q&A for the kids afterwards. We'll probably have him back next year. Ed Bianchi does a piece in conjunction with Vicki Nelson and Kathy Batty around internet safety and digital citizenship.
So in this report, is there, are those incidents somehow, like what would they be under what category, or is it something that you're just not seeing much of until you get to the upper grades?
Good question.
Yeah.
I don't know if something like that occurred in a classroom around the internet would be in the classroom data. I don't think there's actually a data category.
There isn't one just for
cyber.
cyberbullying.
Yeah, it's something that happens sort of
It depends.
out of school. and
Sometimes
Friday,
it comes in and it affects the students, so we deal with it that way. And sometimes it happens outside at recess.
And just to be clear, Susan, I don't want you to think that my comments about the data and the processes are meant to indicate that there aren't behavior issues. You know, we still look at this and we're seeing the fourth grade pop out and we're saying we need to know more about that and digging into it and, you know we're doing things and what more can we do? What I was just referring to is that we need to get to the point where we know the data is telling us more of what we wanted to do without, we want to have it speak to us with a little more validity.
So are you or are you not contradicting at least the implication of what we heard from out here?
What do you think the implication was?
I have a vision of clubs and fistfights in the classroom based on what I just heard.
No, that I would contradict strongly. I'm in those classrooms regularly. I would tell you, no problem looking you in the eye and saying this class is not an unusual class in terms of behavior concerns when I'm in the room, or from what I've heard, my involvement with the teams. I will tell you what's different this year is that piece around the relational and social aggression. And the issue with the thing about that is you can have 6 kids involved in an incident that lasts a week and a half, where somebody rolled their eyes at somebody else, there are 3 kids crying in the corner, and that could take 3 days to work out, and 4 days later, that stuff can get tough, and it can be also subtle, and even though it doesn't come out as visually disruptive, it can be disruptive to the underlying climate in the classroom. So that stuff has been happening, but what I'm pleased to report is that that team has been so responsive and reaching out to Vicki and Mike and me around, we need to get around this. There's even been some communication with parents at a couple points throughout the year around some of what social aggression is and some lessons that were delivered as a result of some of the instances that were popping up.
This discussion around the PBIS is a little frustrating because I've commented on it before, as have other people. This calibration that you're talking about can't be done. It's like the little Dutch boy and the fingers in the dike. Not only do people have different levels of sensitivity, they have different levels of sensitivity to different types of issues. Mm-hmm. And you're going to spend a lot of time and what translates into a lot of money into trying to make uniform a thing that can't be made uniform, because what you cannot replace is judgment. Now, the problem that this class faces, Ms. Bagnato probably is familiar with the Rosenthal experiment. Maybe not. We can talk about it some other time, but it's quite alarming because what it deals with very convincingly is nonverbal communication and preconceptions and how that follows people in the end through a process. And this class, based on what I'm hearing tonight, is already seriously handicapped in people's perception, which will translate into reality, whether the behavior problems are accurately described or not. So the job that you have to do is deal not only with what may or may not be actual incidents of misbehavior, but the perception of those things, not only among the students themselves, but among the staff that has to deal with them. Because, to close this class is really handicapped right now. After this discussion in public, people are going to come away from this with the same vision that I came away with. And they really aren't going to stop to listen closely to information that you provide past a certain point where their needle goes off the scale and you have a real problem.
One thing, and maybe I could bring this data to the retreat if you'd like, that I'm really excited about when we just went over the student climate survey results and the 3rd and 4th grade results around student climate for questions like, I feel safe at school, I know who to report to, I know what to do if I see someone being unkind. Those results are fantastic, and comments from students about the school. So those are at 90% or 88% or 92%, really strong questions around agree or disagree, agree strongly around getting at students feeling safe and comfortable and feeling like they belong. So that is that's good data to have. And what I'm also happy to say is we had every student responded to the survey, so a good data set for both 3rd and 4th grade. I can bring that. I can bring that to the retreat if you're interested. But I assume we'll report out on that at another meeting next year around school climate.
Well, maybe I'll take Sarah's question first. My question is not about 4th grade referrals. Do you have a question?
Well, so Clyde, I can assure you that the turnout you saw tonight was not a reaction to the behavior study, because this has been an issue that 4th grade parents have been concerned about for a while. There's certain kids in the class that are very, very disruptive. And we met with Audrey on, what was it, April 22nd. Audrey and I actually said to you, I expressed my concerns with this particular group of kids and the behavior issues. I'm in the classroom as much as I can be. I like to be as involved in the classroom as I can. And I expressed to Audrey that there's a lot of concern about the behavioral issues in these classrooms. Hadn't even seen these numbers, and regardless of how you discount them, Greg, and try to explain them away, directionally they're very, very alarming, and we can't ignore that. But Audrey, you'll recall that I actually asked you if you'd spoken to the current 4th grade teachers about the particular mix, and you hadn't, but scheduled and did meet with them since then. And I know Sage was there and several other parents, and so we had been concerned about the behavior issues and having such large class sizes. The other thing I wanted to address is you had said there might be some kind of systematic pattern with certain teachers referring, but remember that this class didn't loop last year. So if you go back and look at the year before, they all had different teachers the year before. So this year is a brand new teacher for them. The year before, they were also the highest number of referrals, and it was a whole new teacher. And maybe that's an unintended consequence of switching the kids. Maybe it takes the teachers a couple of years to really get to know the kids, and they were denied that chance to loop with the same teacher and started with a new relationship and a whole new class again, different kids that they were mixed up with again. This has been a very unique experience for these current 4th graders. And recall, when they were in 2nd grade, they were denied that looping too. So these kids have had new teachers every year, some of them. Some of them had the same teacher 1st and 2nd grade, but some were moved around. And then they had a new teacher in 3rd grade and a new teacher in 4th grade. The other question I wanted to ask is, there are some highly special need kids in the 4th grade who have a dedicated aide. Do you include them in this data when they have to be removed from the class?
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about that.
You can't tell me if they're in here.
Be able to say if they're in the data set or not.
All students
students.
who
Yeah.
get referrals are in the data set.
Any student, okay.
Any student, yeah. So my question on the suspension data, what is, I believe we had perhaps a change in how you were determining whether or not a student should be given in-school versus out-of-school suspension. Has there been a change in the past year? Because I see there was, in 2012-13, there were no out-of-school suspensions, and we had 4 this year, and I'm just wondering.
I can share with you at the middle level, in response to some research that's coming out saying that out-of-school suspensions do not support students. The consequences that we've given them, so we've been pretty proactive at the middle level when we're looking at trying to provide a student with a consequence. We're looking at more in-school suspensions and providing opportunities them to make better decisions. For example, having them write an essay and then do some reteaching. So if it's cyberbullying, we go over the cyberbullying policy and the use of devices in school and reflect on that with our planning room facilitator. But we try to make it less, having it out of school, just because we're looking at research saying that really doesn't help students, and having them within the school day, staying and doing some prepare work within the school time frame. So yes, we have done that at the middle level. We're very thoughtful about when we're looking at that. We'll maybe meet as a team. Mr. Dina Kohler, our planning facilitator, I may consult with the school counselor, and we'll sit and decide what we think is important, but using that as a last resort for out of schools.
So out of school would tend to be for unsafe behavior or behavior by a student that compromises the safety or security of others.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there other questions about the behavior part?
What do you guys plan to do about it? What are you gonna change to address it and to direction going the other way?
Well, one of the things I mentioned already is we're gonna start a more frequent, we're gonna start with August pre-service and share the data that the climate committee looked at and the care committee looked at recently. Share the data with the whole staff. We're gonna talk about our processes for doing referrals. We're gonna have a subcommittee of the climate committee meet monthly to look at behavior data, rather than less frequently, which we have been doing. And we're going to continue with the proactive communication between teacher and support staff, like the school counselor, Mike Nicola, and administrator, and using the data to say, okay, what proactive teaching can be done around this particular data set that we're seeing that can help bend the curve on this data.
That can help what?
Bend the curve.
All right, 5.2 CSSU debrief. Everyone was there at least for toward the end. I think the one takeaway, and Susan or Eric, you can add to this as well, is that the CSSU board voted to do special education assessment based on ADM. That doesn't affect our budget that starts July 1, but it will affect our budget that we're preparing starting in September. The way the numbers look right now, we are a loser under this program, but the belief is that over time it makes our budgeting more predictable. Is there anything else from CSSU that? Okay. 5.3 third quarter financial management report.
Anyone who was not knowledgeable on the subject beforehand, having sat through that presentation, still is not.
Molly's presentation?
Exactly.
Okay. So financial report. We are net $33,780 unfavorable. The food service is doing great. I don't know, do people have questions for, I guess, Greg and Audrey, or we could call Bob if people have questions that we need Bob to answer?
I guess just for the record, the numbers didn't add up, and it wasn't a material difference. The total is still 32,000 change, but the numbers were wrong. The expense and revenue numbers were a little bit off. Not a material number in terms of changing the picture, but it's sort of unsettling as a board member if we're relying on not doing the spreadsheets ourselves, relying on Bob and the administration to kind of be attentive to detail. If they can't be attentive to detail in the board materials, it's a little bit, doesn't inspire confidence that they're attentive on everything else we're doing with the numbers. So we just pass it on to Bob.
Well, thank you for noticing that. I'm ashamed to say I didn't do those figures myself. Thank you.
Eric, could you maybe
Yeah,
send a note or indicate which
it's basically the spreadsheet that they attached. The numbers are slightly different than what was typed into the page. Again, the picture remains the same, but it's. I'd like to know that the people doing the numbers for the board are doing it with,
Precision.
precision and attention to detail.
Any other questions or concerns about the financial? All right. We are up to 6.0, discussion matter, 6.1. Input on carousel meeting schedule for 2014-15. And I'm supposed to inquire if they're considering a change to the date of the CSSU meeting and then the local boards as well. The idea is that if we do that, it would allow one or more people from Chittenden South to participate in the regional school boards, what's it called? School Board Association meeting. We are a large supervisory union but have not had representation for a long time because the meeting date conflicts. And I guess there was a request a number of years ago for them to change their meeting, but as it worked for everybody else, they did not. So, but there was also concern expressed that a lot of people are elected or choose to run to be on a school board assuming a certain day and time commitment, and that to change it and then make people unavailable or make it more difficult for them to attend wouldn't be very fair. So I'm supposed to find out if any of these dates listed here, the second or third Tuesday or the second or third Wednesday of the month. Well, right now we are the second Wednesday, so if either the second or third Tuesday or the third Wednesday of the month works for people's schedules.
There wasn't there the possibility that that person would have to spend, be 2 nights in a row, 2 consecutive nights, so maybe that Tuesday isn't a good option?
Possibly not, but I think we're just supposed to find out everybody's
So yes,
availability.
yes.
Yes, for
Yeah.
you? Good?
Tuesdays are fine with me.
Okay.
I'm pretty much indifferent. I'll do any day.
Okay, all right, I will pass it along. I don't know, I can't imagine
I
that
mean, as long
among
as
all
it's
the
the same
boards,
day,
it would be,
Again, just to Susan's point, it was left a little bit hanging, but I'm not going 2 nights in a row. The
oh
same
yeah,
night-
no, I don't want to be that rep to that regional board
It
either.
may not be, if the second Wednesday is set, then that second Tuesday probably wouldn't be the best choice.
Probably not,
The
yeah.
third Wednesday, based on the calendar next year, looks like a good choice, right? Wasn't that kind of what?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
So you lost me a little bit. I've been to several of those VSBA regional meetings, not as elected by anybody, but just because I wanted to see what they were talking about. So I missed that part of the conversation next door. Are they talking about designating somebody to go?
I think that was sort of up in the air. They would like to get someone who's going regularly and then could possibly become an officer, or I don't know what the administrative structure is there or what the structure of the group is, but, or even just to have someone who's there to hear and give a voice to Chittenden South. And it could be, I mean, anyone can go, it's an open meeting, but that possibly, designating someone or.
Well, as I said, I've been to several and spoken about this, that, and the other thing. Clearly, I'm not representative of our board's opinion or CSSU board's opinion. But on the other hand, if they appoint somebody to go, there are a lot of board members in CSSU and a lot of opinions, and to speak on behalf of that group is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I don't think that really was part of the issue.
And I haven't,
It seemed more like a voice at the table.
I don't think I want to meet the person that wants to go regularly to one of those meetings. But I think it would be good to change the night because some people will. I've missed some because there were other things I had to do school-wise. So I think it would be a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. 6.2 retreats. I don't know, do we have a proposed agenda for the retreat? And the time, as people may have heard, originally there was going to be our local part and then a little together part about technology and then local. It's going to be all of our stuff first, then right before lunch we will do the technology piece with the other local boards. And if you're not on CSSU, you're more than welcome to stay and encouraged to stay for after lunch for the CSSU part.
After lunch. It said, that CSSU board meeting happened, so who typically attends, like the chair of our board? So you would go to the second half in the afternoon?
No, all the CSSU reps, because it's the same thing. You're setting goals and.
So, 'cause it sounded like you're invited to come, but.
Yeah, that meant, no, Mark and Clyde who are
Okay,
not
okay.
are, so anyone
Okay.
can come. Don't feel like you're excluded for that. All right, well, if people want additional things on that agenda, you can let me know or let Sandy know. And, yes. Is that right? 8 a.m., Sunset Ballroom, Comfort Suites, that's on Shelburne Road. Yeah, but if you're a little late, because you're dropping your kids off at school, that'll be okay. 6.3 Communications Board Corner. Did we get anything in for this?
No, I did not get it. It's my fault. I fell off the table.
So it looks like our next, it's hard to tell if the due date is the 26th or the 2nd. Can you get something in for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can find out from Brett for sure if it's the,
Yeah, I'll call Brett.
it's the letters time or the article time. That would be great. And I don't know if people want to talk about the next one or if we want to wait. We have maybe at the retreat if people have ideas of what we want the next thing to be. Maybe it's about 4th grade. I don't know. 6.4 Act 60 and 68. We had this on our last agenda, and we discussed briefly that we had sent the we had at town meeting, we had a request that we let our legislators know that we're unhappy with the current funding formula. That was sent. There were some responses back. But we put it back onto this agenda because, Clyde, we knew that you were interested in this topic and you were not at the last meeting, so I don't know what you want to do about this. The legislature is now done for the year.
Find out, I mean, we sent that perfunctory letter.
Yes.
What we were going to discuss was whether our opinion was the same as a board, that we also are dissatisfied with the funding mechanism and should advise our legislators so as a school board. That was the point of the discussion.
Okay.
So what do you guys think?
I think it's easy to say we're dissatisfied with the current funding structure because the current funding structure is broken. However, the current funding structure is judicially in place. We have to do something. So just saying something that I agree with, that it's broken, fine. But I think we need to be a little more proactive and say, what do we think next? Because there needs to be a next, or else there's going to be another lawsuit, and we're going to be right back where we started.
Well, they can change the law, right? That's what the legislature does.
You can change the law, but the way that the court came down said that you have to have some sort of funding across the state. So it has to be replaced with something. You can't just leave the law. So yes, there needs to be some structure, whether it's some either cutting back education funding across the state or some other way of raising funds, or some proposal to save money statewide.
Well, Clyde, were you anticipating that we would, as a board, just say we don't like this, or as a board, we think you should replace the current system with an income tax or various other ways to like, would you anticipate that we would come up with an alternative plan or just register our dissatisfaction with the current model?
The problem with the funding formula is not, it originates at policy level in individual schools and what it is they hope to achieve and what it is they're required by the state to achieve. And you're really not going to be able to change the funding impact until some philosophies have been changed and some state mandates have been eliminated. We're never going to come to agreement on that. What should stay and what should go. So I think the very best that we can do is to just say that as a board, we agree that you need to continue to investigate not only alternative funding arrangements, but the requirements and mandates that drive the funding system. For example, in tonight's discussion, the subject of class size came up repeatedly. I mean, the worst possible thing that the state could do, well, one of the worst possible things, is dictate class size. And one of the worst possible things that we could do, for example, would be to accede to the union's demand that they be able to determine class size. I mean, but there are all kinds of things like that throughout educational statute that really tie your hands. So when we get down to a situation like we had tonight with parents who are borderline irate about their class sizes, what they have to understand, and what we know as a reality, is that there's almost nothing that we can affect other than class size. I mean, we have so few prerogatives now as a school board. Most of the prerogatives are vested either in the superintendent or CSSU. Those things have to change if there's going to be meaningful impact on the amount of money that people have to spend. So, I mean, there's a long list of things. We don't have time to go through it now. So I would settle at the moment for just agreeing as a board to tell Mike or whomever that things need to be changed, and then a discussion can ensue from there, but we don't have time to go through it here or at any board meeting, really.
Anyone else?
Well, I don't think they're borderline irate, I think they were irate. But, yeah, I think that's as far as we can go, because this is what, there needs to be, and it wasn't gonna happen this year, right? It's an election year, things weren't gonna happen. But there needs to be a serious investigation by either a special legislative committee or something that comes up with real, honest, hard solutions, not just, education funding is the third rail of Vermont politics. And until you get some people saying things that are difficult to say, and put it in the public discussion, nothing's gonna change.
That's true. But the kind of stuff that they bring up in the legislature, like imposed consolidation, is going to do nothing except possibly increase the cost.
That's true, but at least it was a discussion. And at least, you know, and the Senate, that was never going to answer the Senate, but so it was something we didn't agree with. I did not agree with it.
I agree with that.
But other people did. And it was a discussion that was to be had. And I think things like that should be out there every year, something to discuss. Because eventually we have to, the town isn't going to keep voting for something that goes up 5% every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say what we agree is that the legislature should spend their time and effort on genuine control of spending, both the mechanism of you know, that they've got in place and the drivers of spending, and to talk and go down other paths that are less productive. Because I think they were trying to get some political cover without making any meaningful change in spending.
I think it was people floundering around doing things just so they could seem like they were doing something.
Well,
But
to
in any
Clyde's
event-
point, we have another mandate. We have to start paying $1,000 for every new hire of teachers. But yeah, I don't know how, you know, beyond saying to Mike, we don't like what we have and we wish you could, and I'm sure he's more than well aware that we don't like what we have and we want something different. All right, is it the will of the board to express?
And to encourage further investigations of educational funding in Vermont.
Close enough. As good as we can do here.
All right, well, do you want to draft something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, why don't you do that and send it around, and then we can send it on to Mike. All right, 7.0, action matter. 7.1, adopt 2014-15 school year calendar. Do I have a motion to adopt the calendar? Second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay. 7.2, authorize signature authority for summer action. Do I have a motion, I guess, to authorize me, I guess? to sign, yeah? Is there a second? Any discussion?
What sorts of actions are you anticipating us authorizing?
Say we have to hire that teacher, someone's gotta sign the contract. I would not, if it were the teacher, I of course would not do that without consulting the board. But I think it's for if we have to hire a para, I didn't sign anything last summer.
That's it, it's for
Yeah.
contracts. for-
Yeah, it's contracts due to someone leaving as well.
My concern, in the event that these folks get around to recommending another teacher, that's not something we should discuss by emails.
Oh, right,
We
yeah.
need to have a meeting for that.
Yeah, we could
Otherwise,
call. And we've done summer meetings before, even by telephone.
Otherwise, I'm fine with it.
Okay. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
8.0, is there a need to pull anything out of the consent agenda? Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, or any discussion? No, because it's consent. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. 9.0, director's comments.
Yes. This is how, for those of you who are relatively new to the system, this is how the testing thing works and the program thing works. Every 11 years, you get a new one. What happens is one is installed, for example, the SBAC, and you begin to try to align curriculum with it, and there's a flurry of activity about the alignment and glowing reports about how the progress is going. And then in that 6, 7, 8, 9-year bracket, people begin to grumble about the thing, and then in a decade or so, something new is introduced. And the reason for that is, in simple terms, since the late 80s in this country, the cost of education, adjusted for inflation, has tripled without anything that even remotely resembles a commensurate change in results. And so, rather than acknowledge, yeah, these approaches don't work, you have a whole new flurry of, we'll do something else. But it really isn't something else, because all this stuff, in the end, is based on a bell curve that doesn't go away. So that's what we're about to enter into with this SBAC thing. We're going to get 5 or 6 years of all about the progress and how well things are working, and then the guild is going to start to come off the lily, and you're going to get new initiatives for a whole different sets of curriculum and correlated testing. So buckle your seatbelts, because you're going to have people like this in here. I mean, there's going to be, for the next half a decade, no solid or believable footing under this stuff, because nobody has any answers, and the answer is always going to be, we're working on that. And then after they work on it for a while, they'll go to work on something else. So the big problem is that we don't have anything to say about it. You know, we don't have anything to say about these really important things that are affecting the quality of their education, by and large. As I said, about all that we can do now is address class sizes. So all I can say to you guys is, whenever there is any kind of an opportunity to have direct influence and decision-making on what goes on around here, we better exercise it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and maybe you misunderstood me before, I mean, our job is not to defer entirely to the administration. Obviously, if they're going off the rails, our job is to oversee and, you know, bring things back. But at the same time, the one point I was trying to make was, if somebody who does this for a living and who's consulted and taken a lot of input and put a lot of thought into it and is able to articulate a credible plan based on some facts and some past performance in terms of the 5th grade, as a board member, I'm going to take that into account in my decision-making, right? I mean, just because I can have a different opinion on class size doesn't mean I have to.
That's why they call it judgment.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
education has changed from an educational process to a political process. And the political process is fundamentally a series of bottlenecks and influences. And the community believes that they elect a board to exercise some judgment and have some effect on that. But we have hardly any.
This seems like it's becoming a discussion item, so do we want this on a future agenda? Seems beyond an announcement or request items for future agenda. Do we need it? Okay. Do you have any director's comments?
So we have the retreat coming up and we'll have open items that we can talk about at the retreat.
Yes.
So we can pursue this fourth grade issue at the retreat, or are we doing that on the June 25th meeting? Is it going to be on that agenda, or?
I think we should definitely talk about it a bit at the retreat, just to decide if we're going to put it on
So I
the...
wasn't here for the item that was retreat on your agenda tonight, but that was to say, what are the topics? And the one topic that I had listed for you guys, based on agenda planning meeting and meeting with the administration, is just the administrative structure piece. That, I mean, that's not urgent. If we wanted to do,
Yeah, I think we should do that, but if we can at least visit, after we've had a chance to
Yep.
digest this.
Yep.
Because if we want to put, if we want to go ahead and warn that June meeting for a discussion item or an action item,
you should have had
we
the
should talk
discussion
about it
before.
at the retreat.
Okay.
I don't see that being as a huge,
So-
necessarily a large part.
Okay, so grade 5, configuration, class sizes.
Sure.
And then I also have a piece about.
Are you or are you not planning to discuss that at the retreat?
Yes.
Yes.
So then we can warn it.
We just sit in front of these people. and-
No, I think we just need to decide if we want to put it on as a discussion item or an action
Well,
item.
that's the purpose of the retreat, period. I mean, it's gotten out of hand over the years, but what the retreat is supposed to be for is to vet items and discuss whether or not you want them to be
And we will do that.
on
We'll work
at a
them.
regular board meeting, not to
Yep.
actually discuss the item in question at the retreat.
Oh, right, right.
So then as far as communication,
With the administration, for the group of parents that were here tonight, I feel like between now and June 25th, how is the information going to flow? Because it seems like there were a lot of emails that went to you and went to you. I don't know if you got any too, but it just seems like for me as a board member, it's just sort of happenstance that I found out certain things that I found out before the meeting. So I'm just wondering, how you're going to address concerns? Like, is it going to be via email, or are you going to have another meeting with this group of parents? Because there's just there are a lot of people here, but there are also a lot of people that weren't, that are members of that class, the parents. I'm just wondering because now there's going to be information that's going to kind of filter out into the community, and just as far as, keeping things.
so this is what I had planned to do after this meeting, and I responded to some parents that I'd be sending parent communication via alert now message in the next day or two, just to say what was discussed, because I didn't know what was going to come up from this meeting, but I feel that that's the best way so I can reach all families.
Okay.
And just say this is where we're at. It's still being discussed. We'll be discussing it at the June board meeting.
Yeah, we can say decision will be made
Okay.
at the retreat about putting,
Whether or not.
whether or not that will be a part of the June agenda. Is that right?
Is there some question here about whether that's going to be part of the June agenda?
Well, say we have 20 kids drop out. Yeah, I mean, I think it's likely.
I'll just inform that we'll be discussed at the retreat, and that there'll be a board meeting on June 25th, I think we said.
Yeah.
We just have to be clear about the language, that people don't think it's going to be discussed, and whether there is or isn't an action that comes out of the retreat discussion.
Yeah.
So it's more, you'll be discussing it at the retreat.
Well, what do you think? What should we do?
I just think that, and I think this is maybe where Clyde was going, if they think you're going to be discussing it at the retreat, they're going to feel like they should be there. You know, I mean, I think that it's just.
Well, does it make sense though at that retreat to decide, like, are we at a place where we can just say, yeah, we're gonna have an action item that says yes or no and put our feet to the fire, or it's just gonna be a discussion item in June, most likely? This is where
And you
the
could let-
numbers are.
And you could let them know that now, that this is gonna be on the agenda at the June retreat,
Or at the June meeting.
at the June meeting. to-
As a discussion
at-
item.
As a discussion with action to follow.
Because it sounded like we sort of alluded to that. We were checking how much
Right.
time we have and.
Yeah, I mean, it gets
June.
back to, I mean, if everybody's staying solid with, these are the numbers, and the two teachers who are there, who are, by every single account, really good teachers, and some people have had their own kids in these classrooms with these teachers with 27 kids, if those teachers are still saying, we think that we can do a better job with 27 kids in our class and two paras who are supporting our efforts, are we saying, okay, well, now we've heard from 20 parents, and so even though you're telling us that, the balance of what we're thinking about that has shifted. You know, I wouldn't call that kowtowing to the teachers if you said, no, we take the professionals' advice on this, because they're the ones who are going to have these kids, are going to be responsible for their education. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anything has changed as a result of what you heard tonight, and if it has, it would be important for Audrey to hear that. That you're thinking, yeah, maybe these classes are too big, or you're saying, no, we believe that the decision that was made to wait until we know what those numbers are is what's going to determine what the class sizes will be and how many teachers we'll have.
But
I
really,
just
that
don't-
needs to be, it needs to be a discussion item on an agenda. So either we put it on June, or we put it on the retreat. We can't just have that go right to action item unless something, I mean, we could, I guess, if there was consensus, but we haven't had it as a warrant discussion item yet.
Yeah, I just wonder what the discussion is. I mean, it's, the facts are the same. We've got this many
What the
kids.
discussion is going to hinge on, quite frankly,
Mm-hmm.
is how convincing your comments are on the effectiveness of paras. Because that's what the difference is. Whether or not two paras in these classrooms will make enough of an educational difference. So what the role and behaviors and engagement of those paras is what will or will not convince anybody that it's a workable model. They know what the teachers can do, but you heard the skepticism tonight about the role of a para-educator. So if this is going to be convincing, it's got to be convincing on that point.
I mean, how much of this is like a legacy of like the looping fiasco that those parents felt, rightly or wrongly, they had a bad taste in their mouth from that? Like, because to me, you're talking about the teachers, you know, it's not, they just kind of guessed that they might be able to do this. They've kind of demonstrated, they've had experience with mid-20s class sizes, right? So,
They had 27 this year.
yeah, so there's a
Without
track
para.
record there that's, this is being based on. It's not just their whim of like, yeah, let's give
Right,
it a shot.
and they're experienced teachers.
You know, and I guess my question is, you know, have there been concerns expressed by other parents that make that leap in fifth grade and then they're ultimately okay with it? Or is this group of parents different?
Well, I was just gonna say, around the legacy piece, around last year's decision, I haven't heard this year from parents saying, boy, this has been a disaster. This has been terrible. You know, why'd you move my kid from? That has not been the case. I have not, you know, there was that was rough last year, and the communication could have been better. But the way things are lined up, the year that we've had this year, the way the numbers are coming up through with the teams, I haven't been hearing from parents saying, I told you this was a problem. You know, that hasn't been the case. There have been things that come up around behavior that come up every year with classes, but I haven't had an unusual amount of, in fact, I can't remember, you know, somebody who just emailed me or called me and said this is, you know, in terms of a follow-up to last year's decision to break that loop. Doesn't mean people are happy about it, but no one has been, you know, and probably because they went to three really, I think it's more about, I'm in a class, my kid's in a class right now with 17 kids in it, or 18 kids in it, and he's gonna be in in a class with a lot more kids than that.
But I'm assuming like other kids, wouldn't that have been the case every other year? And we never got 20 parents to,
No, because maybe this is a bigger class. I mean, I'm thinking of a situation in Shelburne last year where they opened school with 28 kids in fourth grade classes, and their solution was hire paras. And they didn't know that they're gonna have 28 until like mid-August, and instead of hiring a teacher, they had paras. And in this very room, because this is where Shelburne used to meet, there were tons of parents here, but it was September. And, you know, they held strong. They listened, they had a discussion and said, we still think this is the right thing. They also didn't hear back from the parents during the year that this was a terrible thing. And I say that partly to say that in every one of Chittenden South schools at the middle level, even starting in fourth grade, there is a grade in one of those schools in every case.
This is very interesting, but we are way beyond director's comments.
Yes.
You started us off with that director's
Thank you,
comment.
though, you're right.
So let's,
But that's information that,
so I guess let's figure out what's gonna be on that agenda for June and get it out to people well in advance.
And I'd like to follow up with parents, though, I'd like to send something out, because that's what I responded to parents,
Yeah.
just saying that there was a discussion held, parent communication forum this evening. There will be another meeting held on June 25th, where there will be a discussion item as well as action to follow.
yeah.
And then I'll leave it as that.
And
So
we'll work
everyone,
on
and I'm
it.
gonna send an alert now message out, so all families get that. That was my plan all along.
Yep.
The only
Okay.
thing that I had a question about was that part of my plan was to post something on June 1st. If we're not meeting till June 1st, I may still do an anticipated, because that was the plan all along, if we needed or not anticipated. But I could hold off on that.
Posting July 1st?
June 1st. If you look at the recommendation I made for my principal's report was that I would put a posting out in June 1st, anticipated opening. And if we didn't need it, we would just take it out, and then, just so we still have a pool of candidates to look at. But I can hold off on that too. But that was part of my original plan.
May I offer a suggestion to address the parents' concern about the behavior thing? Is that
Can you wait and talk to us
Oh, sorry.
Let's finish this up and then maybe you can talk to Audrey. Sorry, we have gone so far afield in this director's comment part. Do you have anything else? Mark?
I'm afraid to speak.
Good.
yeah, a comment or question. Do we need to do something about ADORA and negotiations? Because this fact finder report's going to come back. There's going to be a period of time when the two sides can get back together and re-engage in negotiations. Do we have a board position that we want to articulate to her?
I think we'll have to see the fact-finding report.
So do we want to put that on an agenda or executive session or something where we're planning to get together to review that and have an opinion?
I think Cindy's gonna do that for the collective boards.
Right, but
No, Eric's correct.
So, how would you weigh in
Oh,
between
I
the
see.
15th and the 25th
Right.
about that
And she's not
negotiation?
on the board.
But also just in general, how would
me
each
talk to
individual
Cindy.
board, so maybe Cindy can figure it out for all of us how we're gonna,
And I'll ask her to send something out to
Discuss.
all of you.
okay, that's a good point. Thank you. I have nothing except for we should try to get this many people to come to our other meetings. All right, 10.0, confirm next meeting dates. Please just go ahead and read that. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? And are Audrey or Greg need to be in there?
No.
Okay, so Joe, if you want to talk to Audrey about that, that would be great. Do you have a motion to go into executive session for negotiation? All right.